2022. And today is a wonderful day here in Las Cruces, New Mexico. Welcome, commissioners, Department of Game and Fish. It's nice to see you. And it's also very nice to see a number of you here present today. And I know those of you who live stream, I thank you again, always, for your support and your assistance with the New Mexico Department of Game and Fish and the State Game Commission. That said, let's quickly move on, commissioners, because we have a busy day. We're scheduled, but before we move into our schedule, Director, may I please have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Salazar Henry.
Here.
Commissioner Lopez.
Here.
Commissioner Gould. Here. Vice Chair Archuleta.
Here.
Chair Salazar Henry.
Here. Very good. One of my favorites is introduction of our guests. Everybody present here today. And then the department, if we have people present online, if they would also like to introduce themselves, that would be great. But let's first start with the panel here at the table, the commissioners, our director, secretary, and our assistant attorney general. So let's start from the far left, and then we'll just work our way around the room. Every person, please state your name and just who you are. Commissioner Lopez.
Tuesday Lopez, State Game Commissioner of the County of Rio Grande.
Salazar Henry, District 2, Southwest Region for State Game Commission. Dino Archuleta, Commissioner at Large, Vice Chair.
Sharon Salazar Hickey, Commissioner and Chair.
Greg Fulfer from the southeast part of New Mexico and Joe.
Thanks, Director of the agency.
Valerie Joe, Assistant Attorney General, Attorney in Fourth Division.
Morning, Madam Chair, Commissioner, members of the public, Stuart Landon, Chief of Law.
Good morning.
Benjamin Segovia, Regional Director for New Mexico Department of Medicine.
Board of Medicine President of New Mexico County, from New Mexico.
Good morning, Carrie Romero, on behalf of the Mexico Council about curbing it. Why Romero? Get around.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioner. Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I'm Kirk Patton, I'm Chief of Fisheries for the department.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Hold up on our southern meeting.
Good morning, Jimmy Seamstress, Chief of Technical Guidance in Good morning, everybody. Sergeant Wallace, Marketing Department for New Mexico Game and Fish, INE.
Morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners, members of the public, Ross Morgan, I'm a Public Information Officer with the department.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners, members of the public, Jennifer Morgan, our Education Coordinator with the Department of Game and Fish.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners, members of the public. My name is Colleen Payne. I'm the Southwest Area Public Information Specialist.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners, members of the public. I'm Darren Vaughn, the editor and translator for the department.
Morning, everyone. Ryan Gar, Assistant Chief of Information Department.
Madam Chair, Commission, members of the
Wonderful. Thank you so much for all those introductions. It's very heartwarming. Families are very important to us. And so thank you all for being here today. Let us move on to the approval of our agenda. Let's have some discussion. Commissioners, any thoughts? No, okay. Well, do I have a motion to approve this agenda? So moved. Okay, and Director, since we have all commissioners present, may I just do the voice roll call?
Chair, the AG feels differently. I think since we're all in person, we can do a.
I agree. Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Agenda is approved. Let's move on to the consent agenda. And for those of you that are following us on our website, the Department of Game and Fish, the agenda is posted there. And thank you for those of you that may have printed out a copy and have it with you. Commissioners, like that previous agenda item, let's have some discussion on the consent agenda. First, there's approval of minutes from August 19th. B, approval of minutes from August 20th, the special meeting. C, revocations. D, special hunt deadlines. Draw 1, bear turkey, February 15th. Draw 2, big game, March 22. And draw 3, pheasant and crane, August 16th. And then E, depredation report. Commissioners, I look forward to hearing from many of you. Have something to discuss. Lord Almighty, Madam Chair, with that, I'd like to move that we to approve the consent agenda. To approve all items in number 5, the consent agenda. Do we have a second? I have a motion and a second. And again, I'd like to have a voice vote. All in favor say aye. 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 Say passes. Items approved. All items. Okay, I heard an echo. That's okay. We're moving right along. Now, one of my favorite parts here is item number 6, general public comments. Thank you. As I call your name, please come to the microphone and state your name and the affiliation that you have. Carrie Romero.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. Carrie Romero on behalf of the New Mexico Council of Outfitters and Guides. You're gonna have to bear with me because what I'm about to say is not really kind of fully thought out yet. And I'm not exactly sure what our request will be, but I just wanted to kind of mention that we will be coming to you all with some requests regarding the stream access issue. I know you guys have been tired of hearing from me about the stream access issue, but in light of the Supreme Court's decision, and we all know that this will kind of ultimately be figured out in the U.S. Supreme Court, but we would really commission directed to give some protections for private landowners. There has been a lot, and I know it's sort of maybe hearsay at this point, but I hear from a lot of private landowners that say that they have been experiencing severe damage from public accessors on their waters inside their private land. This is especially true in the very easily accessible rivers such as like the Rio Chama and Pecos Canyon. So we would really like to see, and I'm not exactly sure what the request will look like, but I'm thinking maybe catch and release on all private land waters or something to that extent. And then a second request, as we go into forming the new RIB for 2023, maybe some description of how the department interprets the law. Because I am hearing from a lot of landowners, I just heard from one yesterday, that are dealing with trespass on their dry arroyo beds. And I know everyone kind of said, oh, that'll never happen, but it is happening. And people are trying to walk their dogs. Or that's in private property. So something to the extent of that, the Department of Game and Fish interprets the Supreme Court ruling to say in the free flowing water, that prevents trespassing on the bank, something that would protect landowners and give them. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Do we have some comments online?
Yes, we do.
Thank you.
Okay, we will start with Brandon Wynn. Brandon, you are unmuted.
Hello, can you hear me?
Or to say in free flowing water.
Yes,
Hello, can you hear me? Hello? Boy, the sound is tough.
Wait for just a minute. We have some technical difficulties in our end. The State Game Commission is back in order. Thank you, Chief. I know you all are working very hard in resolving the issues, and I thank you. I know you came in early yesterday and today, and thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, so we're looking forward to hearing from the public, and we're on agenda item number 6, general public comments. And last I heard somebody by the name of Brandon Wynn. Is he still there?
Yes, Madam Chair, this is, yes, Madam Chair. Yes, Madam Chair, this is Brandon Wynn. Am I coming in?
Yes, sir. We can hear you loud and clear, perfectly.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate you all taking the time to work it out so we could chime in online. And even though I'm high on top of a mountain sitting underneath in Montana, scouting for bighorn sheep, sitting underneath the cell phone tower, probably getting my DNA scrambled. I, of course, wouldn't want to deprive everyone of my sunny disposition and demeanor, so I logged in. So back in March, when the 4-year rule cycle kicked off, I made a comment to the commission, and I said, which is still true, of course, by any objective measure, New Mexico has the most privatized big game tag system in the West by a large margin. And I asked the commission to endeavor during the rule cycle to just make a small part of the wholesale privatization that has been done by commission rule mostly and some legislation public again. And that would be New Mexico public again, because we do own the wildlife. That's black letter law. And so now that this is the last hearing of the rule cycle, it's a good time to take stock and see if the commission, and I mentioned just 5% of privatization, make it public. And so if we take an accounting of what's happened through all the rule cycles, exactly 0 big game permits were moved from the private side of the ledger to the public side of the ledger. Not one. And so we're starving for public hunting opportunity in New Mexico. You heard from the public over and over, literally on our knees, begging for this commission to correct the sins of the past. But no, the exact same system's been perpetuated. I think that it's a poor execution of public trust duties and obligations by the State Game Commission and by the state of New Mexico as a whole. And we've gone through another 4-year rule cycle with 0 change. So it's unfortunate. And I think that y'all did a really poor job for the New Mexico public in that respect. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wynn. Do we have any other comments?
We do. We have Mark Matani. Mark, you're able to speak.
Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the commission, members of the public and staff. My name is Mark Matini, Huati Village, Laguna Pueblo, Cibola County. I speak only for myself and my family. I am, however, a life member of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers and an active member of Defenders of Wildlife. On Saturday, during the August Commission meeting at Gallup, we observed and discussed a valuable presentation on the North American model of wildlife conservation. One of the tenets of the model is that government is obligated to ensure wildlife access to citizens equally, without regard to an individual's wealth, prestige, or land ownership. The information in the recent report prepared by the New Mexico Wildlife Federation and New Mexico chapter of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, which is titled Take Back Your Elk, argues that this principle is not at present being fully honored in New Mexico, as current allocation of elk tags substantially benefits the wealthy and hunters from out of state, pricing out many New Mexicans. I recognize that there are many interests and values involved here, and therefore encourage the commission to thoughtfully and expeditiously explore this issue in a serious kind of manner. That's what I have to say. I've also provided a written copy. Thank you and good morning.
Thank you, sir. Do we have any other comments?
No, we do not have any more comments.
Okay, well, thank you. Let's move on to agenda item number 7. This is the rule hearing, commission deliberation and decision 19.31.3 of the NMAC manner, method, and licensing application rule. It is an action item. So let us begin. This hearing will please come to order. My name is Sharon Salazar Hickey, chair to the commission. I will be serving as the hearing officer and be advised by the commission's counsel from the Office of Attorney General. The purpose of this hearing is for the commission to receive public comment on repealing and replacing the manner and method rule, Title 19, Chapter 31, Part 10, and licensing application rule, Title 19, Chapter 31, Part 3, New Mexico Administrative Code, which will become effective on April 1st, 2023. These hearings are being conducted in accordance with the provisions of the Game and Fish Act and the New Mexico State Rules Act. These rules are being audio taped and video recorded. Anyone interested in a copy of the audio tape or video recording should contact Ryan Dar with the Game and Fish Department. Public notice of this hearing was advertised in the New Mexico Register, the New Mexico Sunshine Portal, and on the department's website. Copies of the proposed amendments have been available on the department's website. Those wishing to comment here today must have registered to submit public comments. The rule hearing will be conducted in the following manner. Staff will present pre-filed exhibits. Exhibits admitted into evidence are available for review by the public on the department's website. After all exhibits are entered, we will proceed to the presentation of the proposed rule, after which testimony will be taken from the audience. Participants are asked to wait until they are called upon to speak. In order to ensure that the hearing is accurately recorded, only one person at a time shall be allowed to speak. Any person recognized to speak is asked to first identify yourself by name and who you are affiliated with for the record each time you are recognized. And 2, speak loud and clear to accurately record your comments. After the person has offered comments, they will stand for questions from the hearing officer. The audience may also ask questions of anyone offering comments after being recognized by me. These hearings are not subject to judicial rules of evidence. However, in the interest of efficiency, I reserve the right to limit any testimony deemed irrelevant, redundant, or unduly repetitious. The commission may discuss the proposed new rule after the public comment portion of the hearing, Final commission action, including adoption of the rule, may occur after the conclusion of the presentation and public comment hearing period of each hearing. So the hearing is now open. Hearing item number 7, rulemaking hearing on the manner and method rule 19.31.10 and licensing application 19.31.3 NMAC. Are there any exhibits for the proposed amendments to 19.31.10 and 19.31.3 NMAC for the record?
I'm Chair, I wish to enter 4 exhibits into the record. Exhibit number 1, the notice of rulemaking. Exhibit number 2, the initial proposed rules that were posted on the department's website. Exhibit number 3, the presentation that I'll be giving today. And exhibit 4, the second public comments that we'll receive specifically for these 2.
Exhibits 1 through 4, as described, are hereby admitted into the record. Stuart, can you please introduce the proposed amendments to 19.31.10 and 19.31.3, please?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, these 2 rules are rules, amendments to rules that are to conform with changes that were made throughout the species rules over the course of the last approximately 8 months, starting in March. So some of these changes were, again, because you adopted some of the species rules that required changes in the manner and method at which we harvest animals. Specifically, we did host 4 hybrid meetings for those species rules. So these manner and method changes and licensing app changes were discussed at that. Specifically to these rules, we received 7 comments, but we received numerous more comments specifically in the species rules, which you'll see or you have seen in the other rules, and we'll get to later. The majority of those 7 that you received here was in this group in particular was on muzzleloader definition, the removal, the proposal to remove scopes off of muzzleloaders. Specifically moving on to muzzleloaders and what we were looking at. So when the department came to you all in March, we came with a proposal to look at removing scopes off of muzzleloaders. And the reason as that is a couple fold. One is biological reason. What we're seeing biologically is that the harvest has become unsustainable for some of our populations, specifically on some segments of the population, male segments of the population for elk and some herd units. For ibex, it's unsustainable on the totality of the population and others. One of the things that we could have done, or what we could have proposed, was a reduction in total license numbers to meet that harvest objective. So we were trying to reach a harvest objective set forth in the next 4 years. Again, we've seen the drought conditions the last 4 years having probably a bigger impact on recruitment on a lot of our wildlife populations. And to adjust for that, we could have again reduced licenses. But one of the things that we looked at is one of the biggest complaints that we all hear is not being able to draw a license or an opportunity. One of the other options that we looked at is where we can make a bigger impact on reduction of harvest by maybe not reducing licenses, was redefining or realigning what is with muzzleloaders. And the reason why we picked muzzleloaders and what you see in the graphic here is this is a comparison within year differences of the success rate of a muzzleloader versus a rifle hunt. So when we first created those hunts back in the late 80s, early 90s, you saw a larger difference between the 2 of those hunts. Almost a 17% difference on average between the 2 of those hunts. What we've seen through time is muzzleloader hunts starting to conform more to the rifle hunts. Success rate increasing more toward the rifle hunts. That's been going on probably for about 15 years or more. But what we were looking at, again, we were trying not to reduce licenses because the biological changes that were happening in our population for the last 4 years, especially due to drought conditions. So that's why we kind of came up with a proposal on taking scopes off of muzzleloaders. By doing so, if we can get back to that separation or that difference in harvest, we may be anywhere from 10 to 20% reduction in overall harvest from the species, therefore allowing us to not have to reduce those licenses by up to 10 to 20%. And so that's kind of the proposal that we came forth on that. We built those species rules, like I said, from the rule that you've already passed, pronghorn, exotics, based on the premise that would come off those license numbers. Well, the rules that were noticed in the register and noticed on our website, Sunshine Portal, also built off those license numbers. So that's the biggest change that you'll see. That lives in manner and method. It does not live in the species rule. It does live in manner and method rule. The other changes to conform with changes you made in or proposing to make another one is prohibiting the shooting of turkeys from roots. That was a proposed change that came forth. And then if you recall in the exotic school, we increased the female immature, the immature male portion, allowing hunters with female immature license to harvest affiliate in the range of 20-inch. That is to try to bring back that sex ratio in that population. And then we created a new bag limit for Barbary sheep of female immature. Currently it's in either sex, but one to target the female immature segment of the population in certain areas to prevent the westward expansion of it. And then in license and application, if you all recall back in the exotics rule, we changed the definition from Iraq Afghan veterans to any New Mexico resident veteran. We did work with the Department of Veteran Affairs to figure out the best definition of it. So the language in that rule would say that those individuals wishing to apply for that must provide proof of veterans through their DD 214 form and honorable discharge prior to application. So that's now in that rule. Again, those are all to conform to changes that were made in those DD. And with that, I would take any questions you want.
Would anyone like to comment on the proposed amendments to 19.31.10 and 19.31.3? Commissioner Salazar Henry, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess the comments I got a couple of questions. And so your data that you went back all the way back to 1988, you stopped at 2000. Why did you stop at 2000?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, we had 3 different sampling methods from 1988 to 2000. And so trying to compare among sampling methodologies is, and you really can't compare. Absolute values of looking at that is not comparable because of biases that were introduced in different sampling methods. So we took that sampling frame of early on muzzleloaders. So that early on muzzleloader frame prior to some of the pyrodex powders that were pelleted and sabots that came in. So then rifling came in on barrels as well, and you had a bigger change in the gun and the makeup of the powder and the charges that came in. So those early on timeframes are more representative of a more primitive type weapon. Since that time frame, and what we see on the earlier is more pelleted powders, sabots, etc. You actually have a bolt action muzzleloader now where a cap goes into, so you have a tighter seal for longer distance shots. So that's why that earlier on was. The other aspect is we are looking at the most recent. We wanted to make sure what's our most recent, even if it's the last 10, 5, 4, or 3 years, because what we want to look at is what's going on currently with the population dynamics. So what our biggest concern was not necessarily muzzleloader. The concern is what's going on with the population dynamics of the separate populations. We wanted to see where we're having issues and if we have to reduce licenses, where we can see the biggest change. And from our perspective on a weapon type training, while trying to keep licenses there had the biggest potential by looking at that gap early on muzzleloaders because they were more primitive, of seeing a difference of 17%, etc. If we could reduce harvest by that, we would have to reduce the license.
So again, so starting in 2001 to 2011, so that's the 10-year time period. Still, we didn't have mandatory reporting until 2012, correct?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Southwell, in 2006.
So if we go back to mandatory, so we're not comparing apples to apples, we're taking a time period that was not mandatory, and we're comparing it to a period that is mandatory. But I guess my question still, if you would hear me out into my question. From the year 2001 to now, is that when muzzleloaders got better and better and better? That's essentially that big long thing you just said, basically said, this was really truly a primitive weapon period, and now we're not, starting in 2001.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Salazar Henry again. So let me explain this graphic a little more. What this is looking at the within year. So within that same year, because you've collected harvest data from a specific year, maybe it is a mandatory harvest, which started in 2006, been present since 2006. But prior to that, there were years where we had voluntary, where it's purely voluntary, where 100 decided to report for harvest. We know on those years there was what they called a half and 100 bias. We backtracked that and redid some statistics on it by doing a random sample of those hundreds and said, okay, what actually is the statistical harvest by going back and doing our random sample, we found out that was biased and biased significantly high. So looking at a muzzleloader success rate in 2002, it maybe was 67%, but we know it was biased by 33% because of the national park. If I can, I know, if I can, what we did in this graphic is the within year difference, because they were collected the exact same in 2000, for example, in 2000, even if rifle was biased high, muzzleloader was biased high, archery, we looked at the separation between the two. What we saw was a convergence of the success of rifle and muzzleloader occur in more recent history. We're more concerned about how this.
I just want to know, did muzzleloader start getting better in 2001 compared to the 20 years before? That's it.
It started, well, you can see back in 2000, there was still a differentiation. It probably came about in that between 2000 and 2010 is when we started seeing it, and probably even more so 2010 to 2020. You'll look at the last 4 or 5 years, we have some kind of a parity, and as much as 4%.
Okay. Yeah, 4 meetings to discuss removal of muzzle scopes of the muzzle. You had a total of 250 people that actually commented. And so what was the final tally on the data where they comment on the rule about muzzle neighbors, or is that in the helpful comments?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Salazar, Henry, is in each individual species rule. And so each individual species had different comments. There definitely was probably more, there was more on the opposed the taking scopes off muzzleloaders. I think what's to recognize too is we didn't reduce, right? So when we first came into the discussion on scopes on muzzleloaders, we said we would keep licenses of a higher number. Had we decided to continue potentially keeping scopes on muzzleloaders for those species, we would have re-looked at the license numbers and probably proposed a much bigger reduction, or we would have proposed a much larger reduction in overall license. So I don't know what the opposition would have been then at that time. I think it was a manner and method, don't take it off.
So I guess what I was asking is, from the data I got from you yesterday, we have about 17,000 muzzleloader hunters that apply first choice, 16,000 some that apply second choice. So you're talking 17,000 people that will find out next year that they can't use their scope anymore because we only had 157 people. So my concern is that this is a significant change in policy for muzzleloader hunters, and I recognize the need to reduce harvests in certain areas where you're not meeting your goals, like we discussed in unit 15 and 16, which are units that are trophy units that the public has gone to and they've been concerned about that. So I understand that. I guess what I'm concerned about is that something that's going to affect 17,000 people, we are going to move forward with it without having had, I think, adequate notice to those folks that we will no longer be able to use the scope. I'm also concerned that when we went to the public, they were never really given the option to decide which hunts and which units they would have reduced licenses. Right now, over in 2014, 2018, and now in 2022, when new 4-year rules were set up, muzzleloader licenses were about 5,500, 5,600, and they've been down to 5,500 or so right now. And that stayed constant each rule change. The success rate has stayed the same at 32% over the last probably 10 years. And yet this is the year we've decided that scopes and things are bad. But on the other side, I'm hearing that, the elk population is growing all over the place. So I guess my concern is, I also know that back in 2000, prior to 2003, the harvest rate in the 80s and 90s bows was 8 to 10%. It's at 25% right now. And yet we haven't, and their technology is, and this is the comments I get back from the people that are concerned about losing their scope. is that bow technology has really increased. And yet we're not talking about, and we're increasing bow licenses in that category. Bow and rifle licenses are being increased. And muzzleloader licenses are staying flat, at least in 2022. And so I guess I'm wondering if you're concerned at all about eventually having to reduce bows somehow or mess with their weaponry in order to reduce the harvest there, because they're actually hunting in the rut. And, you know, you're taking out more big bulls with bows. I'm just curious about, I guess, is there a plan to deal with the increase in bow technology and the increase in the rifle scope technology also? I mean, I guess I'm really, in the South, I understand in the Southwest. Like I said, I've talked to you. You guys did a great job going hunt by hunt, in unit by unit, to reduce licenses from 16, take away the scope from 15. But for the rest of the state, we've decided every scope is off of every muzzleloader. And that's the feedback I get, because why in my units? So I'm concerned that we didn't do a good job of talking to 17,000 muzzleloader hunters. And we only are basing our recommendation on two things. We originally said the harvest is too high, we're giving the elk too much. And so your options are you're going to lose some licenses or keep the licenses. Well, it turns out 10 to 20% of licenses would only be 500,000. And yet we didn't ask the public meeting about whether or not they wanted to lose those licenses. I wonder what the comments would have come back if they had an opportunity. The few that I heard from, which I won't say is everybody, because I don't want to apply it to everybody. The few that I hear is they would rather lose a 1 in 4 opportunity and make it a 1 in 5 opportunity instead of losing their scope. So my concern is that we didn't address this issue on muzzleloaders. I understand antelope and deer being, I think in my mind, to me, a little more necessary to be very conservative because they are not growing population. We don't have the problems that we do with elk. But with elk, I just don't see the need for just using this prescription that is probably valuable in certain months and in certain units and just applying it across the board. So I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Salazar Henry. Would anyone else like to comment on proposed amendments to 19.31.10 and 19.31.3? I have a card here. Please step forward and identify yourself for the record. Jesse Duval.
Thank you, Colin. Madam Chair, members of the commission, Director Sloan Liley. I'd just like to say, and I appreciate all of your comments, Commissioner Salazar Henry, because this is a very complicated issue. And the New Mexico Wildlife, let me introduce myself. I don't think I did that. Jesse Duval on behalf of the New Mexico Wildlife Federation. I've received also a lot of feedback from our membership, and it's of course not all unanimous. The New Mexico Wildlife Federation does support the removal of scopes on muzzleloaders. We are an organization that really prioritizes opportunity and recognize that removing the scope increases the amount of challenge, which we think contributes to a greater fair chase opportunity, but also doesn't limit hunting opportunity in general. A lot of the comments that I've received from our members have to do with individuals who have issues with perhaps their eyesight, and that maybe the removal of scopes would affect their ability to hunt with a muzzleloader going forward. And so I would like to mention that the director does have authority to provide reasonable accommodations for some of those folks. So if they had a letter from an eye doctor, an optometrist, something like that, then an accommodation could be made for those people. Again, recognize this is a very tough issue. There's a lot of different opinions and thoughts on it, but the New Mexico Wildlife Federation does support the removal of the optics from muzzleloaders during muzzleloader hunts. So again, someone with a muzzleloader that has a scope could use that weapon during an illegal weapon season. But during a muzzleloader only hunt, we support the removal of the objects. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else in the audience who would like to ask questions? Ryan or
Okay, we have two individuals online that would like to comment. We will start with Brandon Wynn. Brandon, you are allowed to talk. Please unmute your mic.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Yeah, so this I've hunted with muzzleloaders quite a bit, and starting out when they were actually primitive weapons, you know, and even flintlocks and stuff. And I've also hunted with the modern muzzleloaders, the inline with the sabots and the scopes and everything. And the modern muzzleloader as it exists today, with the scope on it, is it's a single shot rifle. It's not a muzzle loader. I mean, you load it from the muzzle, but from the hunting efficacy standpoint, it's a single shot rifle. So from a practical standpoint, non-scientific, because I haven't done the studies and looked at the statistics, but as a user of these weapons, I can tell you that what the department is saying is that, yeah, you cannot have as many people in the field with scopes on muzzleloaders as you could before the evolution of the muzzleloader. So right out of the gate, I wholly supported the department's proposal to take the scopes off of the muzzleloader, because, as I mentioned in my earlier comment, what New Mexicans are starved of is opportunity. And so anything that can provide more opportunity for not only New Mexicans, but for non-residents too, for all hunters, should be considered. And really, we shouldn't have special muzzleloader seasons under the prior thing that they were primitive weapons. They're just single shot rifles now. And then also most concerning about backing off on taking the scopes off, you know, because it's written as it's written today. I fully support the way the manner and method rules written now as proposed, because the commission has already baked in the expectation. The commission assured, I was at all the meetings this year, the commission assured the department that the scopes were going to come off of the muzzle loaders, and the rules were written like that. So the numbers, the seasons, the number of tags of rifle, bow, muzzleloader were set under the expectation and the assurance that the scopes would come off. So you just can't change them unless you want to go back and have the department rewrite all the rules, go through the hearings again and modify everything. It just would be really a bad idea to not take the scopes off at this point. And, you know, the 17,000 muzzleloader hunters there's not 17,000 muzzleloader hunters that are going to be impacted negatively and not like this. Every muzzleloader hunter, and I talked to a lot of hardcore hunters and you know, more hobby hunters, and everyone I talk to wants these scopes off with very few exceptions. We're really excited about this, and we thought this was a long time coming. What the department makes sense, and I'm glad that they're going to take them off, and it needs to stay as written. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay, do we have anyone else who would like to make a comment?
Madam Chair, we have two additional individuals. Next, we have Katie DiLorenzo. Katie, you are open to speak.
Identify yourself for the record, please, and who you represent.
Thanks so much. Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. My name is Katie DiLorenzo. I'm the Western Regional Manager for Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. As Jesse kind of mentioned, this is an issue that, at least with the New Mexico hunting public, took up a lot of time and conversation. After the department's extensive work on this issue throughout this rulemaking process, we fully support their recommendation to modify the definition of muzzleloaders across all species. We feel like we are also in favor of retaining opportunity. And of course, the department is saying that if scopes were left on, it would significantly decrease opportunity across the board for big game species. So we support this biological recommendation and want to see sustainable harvests continue into the future and the most hunts for the most New Mexicans. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Do we have the other speaker?
Madam Chair, we do have one final speaker. Joel, you are able to speak.
Thank you. Please identify yourself for the record and who you represent.
Yes, my name is Joel Gothard. I represent the hunting public. I am a member of the New Mexico Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. But regarding the changes that the department have proposed, I fully support the changes to the rule about the scopes. I've been hunting with primitive weapons since I was old enough to legally hunt, and I hunt for that reason with those weapons, with those primitive weapons, for the extra challenge and the opportunity. And with the new technology, it's pretty much, in my opinion, ruined that whole, the mystique, I guess, of being able to hunt with a primitive weapon. And so I support anything that upholds our ability to have access to hunting all species with an actual primitive weapon, because the new muzzleloader rifles, they are not primitive. They are, like the previous gentleman said, they are modern single shot rifles. And so I support the change, and all of the people that I hunt with, family and friends who hunt with primitive weapons, we all share the same sentiments. So thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? Thank you, Commissioner
Stuart, what was the definition? Will this be now called primitive weapon hunt? Is there going to be a definition change, or it's just a muzzleloader without a scope of primitive weapon?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Salazar Henry, there will not be a definition change. We'll just remove scopes, and I'll say that in order to be legal to hunt during a muzzleloader only season, you may not use scope. It must be iron sight. Madam Chair.
Commissioner, can you state your name, please?
So what? David Crocker hunted with a muzzleloader. Best shot in Tennessee. What is the what's the crippling loss of scope and not scope with muzzleloader?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Lopez, it kind of depends. So I think some of the differences of the individual hunter. Some hunters probably have a higher moving loss than others. You look at long distance shooting right now, I think there's a lot of shots that are taken where you can't see the reaction of the animal, and some people think they miss and the animal walks off. And I think you see moving loss high at that rate. When you see these long distance shots, I think we actually see a higher wounding loss than we do on shorter distance. When you take scopes off a muzzle, as your accurate range is within 100 yards, so you're going to know if the hit occurs. You're going to know more or less of the spot where the animal is standing, and you probably are going to have a better opportunity to flood track from that point. Whereas if you're 4, 5, 6, 7, even half a mile away at 800 yards, you aren't going to be able to see that exact spot, or very rarely be able to, especially when you talk about a muzzleloader through a scope that has a cloud of smoke that comes out of it through the scope. You don't see the impact. And so not seeing that impact is now you judge animal reactions. At 800 yards, the ballistic coefficient of a muzzleloader is much less. You don't see that impact. 100 is a lot different. So I think, in my personal opinion, I think we're going to see wounding loss maybe decrease with having scopes.
How many more licenses going to be out now?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Lopez, what we did is we did not propose reducing licenses. And so there are going to be potentially 10 to 20% more licenses in the draw this next season than if we would have kept much scope on those roads. We would have proposed reduction in licenses. For example, in the Gila units where we're really worried about older age class males, on those mature bull hunts rifle in there, on average, we were dropping as much as 30% on bull licenses to maintain that sustainable market.
So is that 10 to 20% per hunt or the system wide?
I'm sure Commissioner Lowe's has to be about anywhere from 600 to 700 muzzleloader licenses across the state for elk alone. For ibex, we would have eliminated that hunt altogether. So that hunting opportunity for muzzleloader on ibex, we would have proposed elimination of that entire hunt. On some of the pronghorn hunts in the north central level 52, we would have proposed reducing those hunts for. So it just, we would have had to go individual based hunt and look at what our success rates were, what our harvests were at the time to determine what numbers we would propose on the reduction. Overall, if you would the totality of that across the state, it would have been probably between 10 and 20%. Because our projections are we'll probably see a 10 to 20% reduction in harvest over the
Okay, thank you very much. Well, we are in the hearing. At this time, the attendance sheet shall be marked and admitted as exhibit number 5. The comments submitted and testimony heard during this rule hearing will be reviewed by the commission and discussed during the open session in today's meeting. The commission will vote on the proposed amendments at that time. And I would like to thank everyone present for their participation today. Let the record show that the rulemaking hearing was adjourned at 10:15 a.m. So, commissioners, let us proceed with discussion in our open session. I want to thank everyone again, commissioners, those members that are present and those that were online for your comments. The commissioners read every single comment that is emailed to us, phone calls, conversations that we have. And so we thank you for your input. I'm going to start off by saying Commissioner Salazar Henry raised a very important point. Communication is a very important value. We talk about transparency, but we also talk about openness and communications. So I'm going to direct this not to you, Chief. I'm going to direct it to the director. Communications are very important. So how does the department plan on, other than having gone through the rule hearing, doing a fine job? Thank you, Chief Wiley. Can you speak a little bit more to Commissioner Salazar Henry's comments?
Madam Chair, yes. Obviously, we'll have highlighted as what's new in the rules and information booklet. We also have the capacity to send out email blasts to all of our licensed suppliers. We included in that as updates to changes, as well as when you're buying a license, we have the ability to put in a pop-up that will show up when you put in for muzzleloader hunts. Reminder, the rule change this year kind of thing. The last one on board with IT, make that work exactly right. But I think those are the mechanisms by which we can be sure that whoever is putting in for a muzzleloader hunt next year will know that its scope is no longer allowed.
Thank you, Director. Commissioners, any other comments or things you'd like to discuss? Okay, do I have a motion? So sorry, but you want to go through the whole. You need, thank you, Vice Chair. I appreciate that. I'll just go ahead and say, we hereby move to repeal and replace 19.31.10 NMAC as presented by the department and allow the department to make minor corrections to comply with the filing this rule with state records and archives. Do I have a second?
Madam Chair, you might want to also add in 1931.3.
Oh, yes,
That's the license and application. That would be the order exception.
Yes. So let me clarify. Thank you, Chief. because it was very clear in the hearing as well as in the presentation. So let me clarify my motion. We hereby move to repeal and replace 19.31.10 and 19.31.3 NMAC as presented by the department and allow the department to make minor corrections to comply with filing this rule with state records and archives. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Volker. Because this is a rule hearing, rather than a voice call vote, Director, can you please take a roll call vote?
Commissioner Salazar Henry,
No, and I'd like to explain my vote.
Commissioner Lopez,
Yes.
Commissioner Folker. Yes. Vice Chair Archuleta,
Yes.
Chair Salazar Henry.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1.
Motion passed. Thank you, Commissioner Salazar Henry. We have the floor to explain your vote.
I guess I just want to let everybody know that my concerns center around the lack of public involvement to a great deal of number of people. The Colorado Division of Wildlife, who I spent some time talking to, are talking about doing some scope limitations, but they're out with the public a year ahead. They want to have the public's buy-in before it ever goes to their commission. And that's what I believe is missing here. I also believe that the department has staff and expertise to have done exactly what they did in the Southwest units in 15 and 16 to target those specific codes and units to do what they need to do to bring in older age class bulls. I believe they could have done that across the state with some investment in time. And so I'm hoping that going forward, that the department will recognize that a shift as big as this that affects the 17,000 people that will apply for a muzzleloader or have in the past, that there should be something a little more than the same process of going out, having 4 months to comment, and that's, you're stuck with what you're stuck. So I'm not questioning the department's professionalism as far as the biology. What I'm really disappointed in is that we went from it's a population issue to now we're just trying to bring back muzzleloader to primitive weapon. I don't like that sleight of hand, and so I don't want anybody to believe that I'm trying to be obstinate about anything other than my concerns about public involvement. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. I do appreciate that. It is now 10:21, and what I would like to do is take a few minute break, maybe get back into session at exactly 10:30. I will be bringing this back in at 10:30. The State Game Commission meeting is back in session. Thank you, Department of Game and Fish. You just brought something to my attention, which is that we have one other agenda item before we break at noon for our executive session. As everyone can see on our agenda, the working lunch session on page 3 is from 12 to 1:15. We have attorneys who are zooming in at 12 noon and their schedules. It's 10:30, so we might be running ahead of schedule because we have the agenda item number 8, the rule hearing on the elk rule. So my suggestion, commissioners and Department of Game and Fish and members of the public, is that we, rather than go into an early executive session, we pick up from agenda item number 11 and agenda item number 12 and 13, if time permits, okay? Chief Stuart Lively, that's going to impact you the most, but thank you. For those of you who can't see, he just gave me the thumbs up. And so I'm inclined to proceed like that, and I'm looking for smiley faces, and I see a lot of smiley faces. Good, good, good. And commissioners, I think you're good with that suggestion. So we will break at exactly 12, a little before 12, wherever we are, but we need to ensure that we complete our rule hearing portion, okay? So that said, let's move on to agenda item number 8. So agenda item number 8 is the rule hearing, commission deliberation and decision 19.31.14 NMAC, the ELK rule. So that said, this hearing will please come to order. My name is Sharon Salazar Hickey, Chair to the Commission. I will be serving as the hearing officer and be advised by the Commission's counsel from the Office of Attorney General. The purpose of this hearing is for the Commission to receive public comment on repealing and replacing the ELK Rule Title 19, Chapter 31, Part 14, New Mexico Administrative Code, which will become effective on April 1st, 2023. These hearings are being conducted in accordance with the provisions of the Game and Fish Act and the State Rules Act. These hearings are being audio taped and video recorded. Anyone interested in a copy of the audio tape or video recording should contact Ryan Darr with the Game and Fish Department. Public notice of this hearing was advertised in the New Mexico Register, the New Mexico Sunshine Portal, and the department's website. Copies of the proposed amendments have been available as well on the department's website. Those wishing to comment here today must have registered to submit public comments. The rule hearing will be conducted in the following manner. Staff will present pre-filed exhibits. Exhibits admitted into evidence are available for review by the public on the department's website. After all exhibits are entered, we will proceed to the presentation of the proposed rule, after which testimony will be taken from the audience. Participants are asked to wait until they are called to speak. In order to ensure that the hearing is accurately recorded, only one person at a time shall be allowed to speak. Any person recognized to speak is asked to, 1, identify yourself by name and who you are affiliated with for the record each time you are recognized. And 2, speak loud and clear to accurately record your comments. After a person has offered comment, they will stand for questions from the hearing officer. The audience may also ask questions of anyone offering comments after being recognized by me. These hearings are not subject to judicial rules of evidence. However, in the interest of efficiency, I reserve the right to limit any testimony deemed irrelevant, redundant, or unduly repetitious. The commission may discuss the proposed new rule after the public comment portion of the hearing. Final commission action, including adoption of the rule, may occur after the conclusion of the presentation and public comment period of each hearing. The hearing is now open. It is hearing item number 8, rule-making hearing on the ELK Rule 19.31.14 NMAC. Are there any exhibits for proposed amendments to 19.31.14 NMAC for the record?
Madam Chair, I wish to enter 6 exhibits into the record. Exhibit number 1, the notice of the rulemaking. Exhibit number 2, the initial proposed rule that was posted on the department's website. Exhibit number 3, the presentation that I'll be given today. Exhibit number 4, the summary of the proposed changes. Exhibit 5, the technical information that we relied upon to develop the rule. And exhibit number 6, the 152 public comments received during the rule.
Stuart, thank you. Can you please introduce the proposed amendments to 19.31.14?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, As you've heard this will be the third time hearing this presentation, so I will kind of slighten it down a little bit. But in general, we have 17 different herd management units within the state that we have specific management goals. As we discussed before, we either quality hunt management, opportunity hunt management. We then split that into 3 primary management zones, special and secondary. So what you'll see as I go through this, I'm going to focus more on our herd management units where we have specific goals and our recommendations for that. Real quick, just the summary of last year's harvest: 38,000 licenses sold, approximately with a harvest of just over 15,000 elk statewide. You'll see compared to other species, we actually do harvest a fair amount of females in that, and that is to work on population management, trying to prevent expansion of populations in some areas, or trying to stabilize herds, etc. You'll notice in deer or pronghorn and the other species, we're harvesting less than 100 or 200 statewide, whereas you're seeing a pretty significant female component harvest on this population or species, excuse me. Public comments, as I stated, 152 official comments submitted during the rulemaking. We had 4 hybrid meetings. And then many stakeholder meetings as well, one specific in GMU 34, but we met with a lot of the different interested groups to discuss the rule changes. You'll see the breakdown of comments there. They changed through time, right? Because the public comment period started in March of this year. Some of our proposals were adjusted based upon public comments. So some of what we have today is a function of the comments that you have support against, but some of the people are the same commenters that used to support, and now they're for the change. So you'd have to go through the specific time frame when the comments came in, but those are the breakdown of the comments across all the species. The statewide recommendations, as you all recognize, with the manner and method that we just did, the big proposal was scopes on muzzleloaders. Again, it really came as a biological issue that we were kind of trying to get at, and just want to provide you a little bit of a graphic of that and what we're dealing with. So this is probably our #1 trophy management zone in the state is our Gila elk population, and we're dealing with the decreasing, and you'll see there in that figure, that's the last 4 years, a decreasing bull to cow ratio, so less older age class males, fewer bulls in general, but we're also having an issue. If I put up a line on there on recruitment or calf to cows, we're having a decrease there as well. So it was an adjustment that you'll see that we did reduce rifle licenses in that unit as well, but that was the big change on the muzzleloader that we just discussed, is try to align harvest objectives with what the population trajectories are, or what we suspect they will be. We don't know if it will break the drought, trajectories will change, but it's going to take some time no matter what to bring back that population trajectory on some bull to cow ratios, and we're seeing that across the state and some others. Some of the other things that we did was date shifts that we always kind of do to make sure that hunts begin on a Saturday. So it creeps every year, 2 days on a leap year. So we push those hunts back every so often. So in 2025, we'll move the hunts back a full week to account for the creeping of a calendar day or 2, depending on our leap year each year. As we've discussed a lot at the last commission meeting in August, the encouragement hunts, moving those to youth only, et cetera. Going specifically, and I'm not going to go herd unit by herd unit, but I'm just going to give you a regional kind of basis. If you have specifics on herd units, we can go that. But really what we're looking at is an increase in licenses in the San Juan herd and a decrease in the Mount Taylor herd. Mount Taylor herd, we're still trying to bring back that population. It was on an all-time low probably 4 or 5 years ago. We're starting to see a little bit of a rebound, but we don't even harvest cows in this population because we're trying to bring it back. That bull harvest is still unsustainable, and you'll see that decrease as well. Overall, the increase in the San Juan, that's probably more a function of elk becoming residents that came off Jicarilla Nation or out of southern Colorado. North Central herds, so that herd's probably the largest herd in the state. It goes from the Rio Grande all the way over to Chama, south to about Abiquiu. What you'll see there is not much of a change in license numbers, but a redistribution. So if we went to the specific units, and again, I don't have it up here, but we did redistribute harvest to try to target areas where we had more conflict. Some of those areas where we have more conflict is in that Mesa de las Viejas, Conjilon area. We redistribute some of our late season tags that used to be over on the or along the Taos Plateau or along the Rio Grande del Norte monument, and moved them over there to target that segment of the population where we have that conflict. That area is one where we definitely hear a lot about from landowners as well as grazing permittees in there. One of the things that I do want to mention that we have available in the current rule and that we would have available in our proposed rule moving forward is the population management opportunity to target segments of populations occurred where we're having conflict or where we have more issues. We have issued or had hunts in the past in that specific area to target those elk late winter prior to spring. We will be looking at it again this year, depending on snowfall, to see if we can target harvest within that Mesa de las Viejas, Cajilon, that area to try to target harvest again, those elk that are more of the problems, rather than trying to harvest across the entirety of the population and not harvesting the animals that are causing the conflict. We don't want to reduce that herd more. One thing to note is that herd is in a reduced recruitment and has for the last couple of years. We're down to, I think, 30 calves, 35 calves per 100 calves. We would like to see it at 40 to 45. So we're seeing fewer babies become adults is basically what that's saying. So our hardest objectives, we didn't reduce licenses in there. We knew we probably see a little bit of reduction in that herd. But if we get some rains and some snow, we think we'll come back. And again, we could target harvest in those conflict areas. Jemez region, again, really the only change there is it's mainly on the Valles Caldera, increasing a few cow licenses on the Caldera there. But overall, no change. We are seeing a reduction in calf recruitment in the Jemez region as well. It's kind of a similar trend across the state. I do think it's a function of a little bit of the drought. The summer probably helps some, but we'll see where it goes from there. In the Southwest region, we did change the primary or propose changing the primary management zone to 2 specific units. What you're looking at right here is unit 13, and the 2 circles are where we expanded the primary management unit in those 2 areas to better encompass how that herd moves across that landscape. Encompass in around the bottom circle, that southern circle is more around the Bear Mountains. That elk population definitely centered there just outside of Magdalena. And then in that northwest segment is up by Alma Pais National Monument, where we definitely have more resident herds. So what you'll see there, that red is land that went into tribal trust. That used to be private, that is now Congress designated as tribal trust. So that gets removed from the primary management. So because it's now a sovereign land as well. And then also in the Southwest region, and this is in GMU 17, if we took that previous graphic that I just showed and showed that southern boundary in the Bear Mountains near Magdalena, that extends into 17, and we extended that primary management zone in there to better recognize how that herd moves across that landscape. So, and an increase in the primary management zone in those units. Overall on the Gila, as I mentioned in the first slide, showing that decrease in bull to cow trend, we are seeing it throughout. We are proposing a decrease in licenses. The majority of those licenses are within the greater Gila, and the majority of those are bull licenses. Those are bull rifle licenses. We did not reduce any of the cow licenses. So what you're seeing is a reduction of 179 bull licenses. That 3% reduction is not of bull licenses, but the total number of licenses in there. Again, as I stated a little bit earlier, we're proposing reductions of up to 30% rifle licenses in some of those given units, 10% in others, and so forth. But overall, a decrease in the Southwest region to recognize changing in herd dynamics over the last 4 years there. In the Southwest region, or excuse me, Southeast region, that's in the Sacramento Mountains, we are proposing a significant increase in licenses, mainly in the Sacramento herd. That's the herd that's south of Mescalero Apache. That would be in the Cloudcroft, et cetera area. What those proposed license increases are cow licenses. That's trying to target probably a growing population, and a population that we'd have probably more conflict than others. Like I mentioned, Mesa de las Viejas, that, et cetera. That population, we are proposing that increase to try to target, reduce the herd, and also trying to prevent what we're seeing as more animals move off mountain to the I guess it'd be to the southeast towards Pinon on in towards the Guadalupe Mountains. We're hoping this targeted harvest will help to reduce the population some and at least stabilize it at the very most. But again, we do have the tools available in the proposed rule and current rule. If we don't think it is achieving that goal, we could institute population management hunts like we've done in the past if we didn't put enough licenses in to try to achieve that. This herd is actually fairly productive. Calf to cow ratios have been as high as 50 to 100 in the last 4 years compared to 30 to 100 up north. So we see a fairly high productivity on this herd. I think it's a function of a little bit of forest management that we see on Mescalero is different than on some Forest Service that allows for spill off onto the forest. Northeast region, we had a specific hunt trying to address one area in there. We called it the Ute Midnight. It was Top of the World Farms, is where we really had elk coming in out of Colorado late winter and camping on winter wheat, etc. We had a license of 40 for 1 month long season. Those elk are not coming down anymore from Colorado. The success rates have dropped to single digits. We were successful on it, so we were proposing eliminating that hunt because they're not there anymore. And then in the secondary management zone, what you'll see is more of increases in these licenses across the board for the most part to respond to elk moving into new areas. Some of these are in the desert, for example, on 30, those more like Guadalupe Mountains. And then shifting some of the hunt dates to match the private hunt dates as well in the secondary management zone. And then the special management zones, that's just along the eastern spine of the Sangre de Cristos, where it's almost entirely private deed land. One of the big proposal changes is moving 46 from the secondary, or excuse me, from the special to the secondary management zone. And then in the Colin Neblet WMA is decreased licenses significantly. We're seeing fewer and fewer elk on the Colin Neblet. That whole very northeast portion of the state saw the lowest calf to cow ratios this year than we've seen. It was less than 10 to 100. So we're having some calf recruitment issues, and that's why you also see the reduction or proposed reduction in licenses in the Ohio at all. So with that statewide, we're about a 2% increase of licenses. Again, the license recommendation is based upon what we perceive success rates will be, and we do have tools and management opportunities in the rule if we don't meet those license objectives or harvest objectives, excuse me, where we can increase or decrease licenses by up to 20% or create population management if we have areas where we have concerns. So with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chief. Anyone would like to comment on the agenda items before we move to the commission? Because I think we typically would like to get comments from the public. Well, actually, I have no comments. If you could please come to the podium, identify yourself for the record as I call the names. Thank you, Chief Lively. And thank you, Commissioner Lopez. Before we proceed with the commissioner's questions and comments, I'd like to call up persons to the microphone. Identify yourself for the record when you come forward. And these are comments that were submitted to the department in advance. These are called by received, I believe. Alex Wright.
I registered to make comments, but I'd like to decline at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Jesse DeBell.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the commission.
State your name for the record, please.
Will do. Jesse DeBell, Executive Director, New Mexico Wildlife Federation. Madam Chair, members of the commission, I just want to emphasize again, as I've done in the past, that I think what we've done here with the elk rule is only partially addressing elk management in the state of New Mexico. We know that only 62% of the elk tags go into the public draw. And unfortunately, this commission was unwilling to open E+ because it's a permanent rule, but I think it was completely appropriate to open during the elk rule, recognizing how many of the tags in this state are allocated through the elk private land use system. So this commission was originally designed to be a buffer between wildlife management and politics. And apparently that isn't working properly at the moment. And so hopefully we can work together to make some adjustments to ensure that the commission is properly insulated from politics and we can manage wildlife for the benefit of the residents of New Mexico. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Lauren Patterson. And when you come to the podium, please state your name for the record and who you represent.
Good morning, commissioners, Madam Chair, members of the commission, and the public. Lauren Patterson, president of New Mexico Cattle Growers Association and registered lobbyist for the same association. Today, I sent you guys a letter on the 10th of October It's kind of our last attempt at a fourth quarter field goal for the elk rule. It's come to our knowledge through our conversations with Director Sloan and Stewart, Chief Stewart, that the biological triggers that determine how many elk are harvested may be kind of a late thing when it comes to habitat responsibility. We're seeing significant impact on grazing allotments all over the state from elk. And we believe that the purpose statement is kind of your mission statement for the elk rule. And we believe that it lacks multiple use management factors in that mission statement. And so this, like I say, this is our last attempt. We would prefer to see more elk being harvested, particularly in some very impacted areas in regards to endangered species, because the cattle permits are being cut due to impacts not only from the cattle, but also from large land beasts we call elk. So, we respectfully come to you. We believe that the rulemaking process is the place for this. We don't want to take away from the separation of powers in any way and go to the legislature for this. We believe that having some ability for the commission to open the elk rule at any time is a good thing long term. So respectfully, we ask that, and we look forward to comments.
Thank you. Carrie Romero, please, as you come forward, state your name for the record and who you represent.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Carrie Romero on behalf of the New Mexico Council of Outfitters and Guides. Just wanted to voice our support for the proposed changes to the elk rule, as well as the deer rule and the turkey rule, which you'll hear later. And also just wanted to say thank you to Chief Liley and his team for allowing us to meet on multiple occasions with the department for all of the various different species rules that have been open to discuss our questions and concerns with the proposed changes as the rule making process began from inception until now. So just really appreciative of that. And we are in support of the rule. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any comments from members of the public online, Brian?
Madam Chair, we do have comments. Brandon Nguyen, you are first. Please unmute.
Please state your name for the record and who you represent. Good morning, Brandon Nguyen.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. This is Brandon Nguyen from Albuquerque, and I represent myself and my family. I'm speaking as a private citizen. And so I just want to reiterate that it's extremely unfortunate that this commission made no effort to move any of the elk hunting opportunity from the private wealth-based buy your way to the head of the line pay-to-play system that is enormous in New Mexico compared to any other Western state. And you don't even need to open, like I pointed out in a prior meeting, that if you look at it, really the cut where the private tags are shaved out of the public domain is in the elk rule, which you're considering today. If the commission, after getting further information from our Take Back Your Elk report, which I helped prepare, if those numbers bother you, which I mean they should as a public trustee, then today you could in just the elk rule change the percentage, the huge percentage of tags that are made private and that are majority between 75 and 95% sold to non-resident, wealthy non-resident hunters. And it's not the non-resident part per se that is the issue. It's that when you set the bar for acquisition of a tag to the wealth of the hunter, by virtue of the fact that there's 327 million Americans that are not New Mexicans, it's always going to be dominated by non-resident. So it's not the non-residents that's getting the tags that gives me heartburn and should give public trustees heartburn. It's the fact that it's just that's an artifact of the fact that it's wealth based, and there's just more people with more money that are not New Mexico residents. And then the outcome, of course, is that we have the smallest proportion of public elk tags acquired by a New Mexican without paying a private individual, either an outfitter or a landowner of any of the Western states by a wide margin. And this is a very unfortunate situation.
Do we have any other comments?
Madam Chair, we have Joel Gothard who would like to speak. Joel, you are unmuted.
Thank you. Thank you. State your name and who you represent for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Joel Gothard. I'm from Hope, New Mexico, and I'm representing Hunting Public. Madam Chair, Commissioners, thank you for taking my comments. I simply ask that you review the E+ program and find a way to bring it more in line with the North American model of conservation, giving fair access to all hunters regardless of income or wealth status, bringing the New Mexico resident draw opportunity up to closer to maybe an 85 or 95% of the pool versus what it is currently. I think, according to the Take Back Your Elk information, it's closer to about 54% that is success for the New Mexico residents. So I just feel that a public resource should not be sold to the highest bidder for private gain. That is all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments?
Madam Chair, we have one final online comment from Katie DiLorenzo. Katie, you are allowed to speak.
Thank you. State your name for the record and who you represent.
My name is Katie DeLorenzo, representing Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. Good morning again, Madam Chair and Commissioners. You know, we know that this issue of elk tag privatization is kind of gaining steam now because the public really hasn't been aware of it. I've been in this role for 5 years, and I can tell you that, you know, it's not something that's shared widely or that people really are privy to. And something we'd specifically like to ask, in addition to taking a closer look at the E+ program, is knowing how highly committed this body is to transparency, openness, communication, just requesting that Game and Fish start publishing the total number of E+ authorizations given in the primary and special zones in the procs. So in the hunting and rules and info booklet right now, you guys have the private land hunt section, and you could very easily add the total number of those authorizations into those sections so that there is more transparency about the extent of the tag privatization that results from the E+ system. I think everyday hunters and New Mexicans deserve to have that information and have that on an annual basis. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe that was the final comment, Brian.
Madam Chair, that was the final online comment.
Thank you. Commissioner Lopez, do you have a comment?
Question. Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief Lively, is there Unit 50 of the Central Park area that goes all the way down to Velarde, Espanola? Is that considered a conflict area there where we have the apple orchards and hay area that would be considered for possible population management?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Lopez, absolutely. And also just for a note, that area is in the secondary management zone, so we do not include that in the primary management zone. So within that area around Velarde, Biennial, all that area right around her, it is in secondary. So private landowners deeded private property, it's over the counter for elk in there because of those conflicts on there. It would be a potential in there, that Black Mesa, that area, as well as potential population management. The issue that we run into in there is discharge of a firearm because there's so many homes in there. And so we can strategically put hunts like we've done in the Middle Rio Grande for elk specifically that are limited use weapons, shotguns or archery equipment. And we can work with those in the past. on some of those.
Okay,
Thanks. Good, thank you, Madam Chair.
okay. Commissioner Salazar Henry.
Stewart, in the that are hybrid management zones that have a secondary and a primary both.
Madam Chair, it'd be Commissioner Salazar Henry 13, 17, 21B, 23, and 24.
Okay, and in those hybrid units, does the hunt structure that's required for a draw license holder on the primary zone equate to the same thing for a private landowner?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Salazar Henry, on some of those GMUs, yes, on some of them, no. And some of those ones where I would say no is where 17 and 13 is probably the biggest distinction. Those are muzzleloader units, but the eastern half of those units are along the river, more or less I-25 bounded, so they come down to the desert floor. When it reaches the desert floor, we do allow private landowners as they come in, like Sun Acacia, that area, hayfields, to allow use of rifles on that in the secondary management zone on the private deeded property. Now, they do not, in those areas, they are not allowed to hunt unit wide. They are restricted to private deeded property.
Do they start at the same time or they just get to start?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Salazar Henry, in the secondary management zone statewide, they start on October 1st. And some of the GMUs like 21B, they start October 1st as well now in the new, or that they will in the new proposed rule. 13, 17, they do start at a later date.
So can you tell me why those two would start at a later date since they are muzzleloader?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Salazar Henry, so where we drew the primary management zone, and you'll see in the proposal, we tried to draw in where the core of that population is. We are trying to protect that core of that population and harvest around that. Early harvest in that has more of an impact on that declining bull to cow ratio we see. Out here in the desert, we're starting to see elk really along the Bosque in the middle Rio Grande Valley. They're not going back to the mountains. They come out, they stay there, and they establish, like in the Sun Acacia, that area, they're going into hayfields, establishing in the desert, and they're not the core of the population. So what our harvest management, the primary, is to protect and have management goals in that core population. In the secondary management zone, where we have a lot of human conflict, where we would deal with them on depredation complaints, et cetera, it's more beneficial to have the landowner be able to take care of it rather than us to go out there and have to harvest elk, kill elk, et cetera, that have established in those state fields.
Thank you. Thank you. For the record, I have another person who has submitted a record to make public comment. So I'm going to call this person back. Alex Wright, please. And please identify yourself for the record, state your name and who you represent. Thank you.
Good morning or good afternoon, we're getting close. My name is Alex Wright. Thank you, Madam Chairperson and the Game Commission for allowing me to make these comments. I registered to make comments earlier because I was here to comment on the E+ program. I saw that it was not coming on the agenda, but that I heard quite a few comments, and I thought that it would behoove everyone to hear our perspective. My wife and I have a private ranch in Unit 34, 2,300 acres, and we are cattle ranchers in both Doñana County and Otero County, and we basically forego the right to graze our cattle and our ranch in the southern Sacramento Mountains in order to manage the ranch for habitat for game, being elk or mule deer or bighorn or Barber sheep. We are in a very arid region of the state. And in the southern Sacramentos, there would be virtually no, I should say no, but sometimes no water and virtually no water in that area. Save very, very few live springs that are few and far apart. It's very arid, it's very dry. And if it weren't for our painstaking trips up there to make sure that water was provided on a continual basis to the game, the elk, the deer, and putting out mineral and salt. There wouldn't be any game there. There wouldn't be the game and the numbers that are there. And we participate in the E+ program because it's an economic benefit for us to do that. And that allows hunters to come onto our property and hunt those game. And we make more money participating in the E+ program than we would ever make running, 25 head of cattle. And so that's why we do it. And I just appreciate the opportunity to make that comment. And I think that everybody should realize that there's two sides to every point. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. For the record, remember, we're back on the hearing, commissioners. So at this time,
I have just one quick question that I forgot. It's on my list.
Commissioner Salazar Henry.
Stuart, you mentioned that you were going to add two more hunts into Unit 34 antlerless. And I saw that the last date is December 10th to the 14th for antlerless right now in the current rib. So how late are you going into December with those two hunts? Are they 2 different weeks, or what's happening there?
Madam Chair, members of the commission. Pulling it up right now. We ended up adding more hunts, so the distribution of hunts was pretty stacked in there already, trying to harvest. We are going into January and later to try to target a harvest in there. So we are trying to specifically harvest in Sacramento's more elk. We are proposing going, like I said, late into January in that with these new hunts as well. And I will get the exact dates in just a second. I apologize. So we are having a hunt, January, the first year of the hunt would be January 27th through January 31st. So it would be a late season hunt in there.
Antlerless?
Antlerless.
Can you tell me how pregnant cows will be by then?
Madam Chair, commissioners, I mean, they're pregnant in September. The uterus is pretty small by January, the first trimester, second trimester, they're still pretty small. A uterus is probably on the average cow elk about like that size and late January.
Noticeable. The only reason I asked this is because during my tenure, we had depredation hunts and antlerless hunts all the way into February. And there was such a public backlash over opening up an elk and actually seeing the baby in there that big. So just, I got that question about how late you guys were going to go. And so I appreciate the information.
Thank you. So, Director, Mr. Secretary, getting into exhibits. In the public comment, I heard a reference to exhibits from Alex Wright and Lauren Patterson. Both of them made references to letters that they submitted. And I understood from each of them that they wanted those letters into the record. It's wonderful to hear the commissioners, the members of the public, communicating with each other and having this kind of dialogue, especially including the ones that were online. So for the record, I would like to ask you, Mr. Secretary, should we be introducing Exhibit 7 and 8?
Madam Chair, I think they're already in the.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, they did submit their comments through their official public comments, so they are submitted on the record. They are part of that thumb drive of the 152 comments that are submitted in the record.
Thank you for the record. So then we do stand at exhibits 1 through 6 as stated earlier.
Madam Chair, that's correct.
Okay. Then those that registered and participated in the hearing will be included on the attending sheet. And that will be marked Exhibit 7. Now, the comments submitted and testimony heard during this rule hearing will be reviewed by the commission and discussed during the open session of today's meeting. The commission will vote on the proposed amendments at this time. I would like to thank everyone present for their participation today. Let the record show that this rulemaking hearing was adjourned at 11:11 a.m. Now, commissioners, shall we have some discussion? And before we proceed into discussion, do we have any more comments, Director, other than these? Okay. And we don't have any Ryan online that would like to make another comment?
Madam Chair, we actually did just have one individual, Joseph Rivera, request a comment.
Can you please state your name? We can't hear you.
Joseph, please unmute. Joseph, please unmute. We're unable to hear you.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Joseph, yes, and we just have like 2 minutes, please, 2 or 3.
Yes, I'm Joseph Rivera from the City of Champions here in Artesia, New Mexico. We have been listening on the past few commissions, chose not to comment. Did see the proposals under consideration for Unit 34 to just reduce 170 mule deer tags, which is far and away, and the number of folks that I have visited with unsatisfactory. And so it wasn't nowhere what we had asked for, what we had hoped to preserve the mule deer population in Unit 34. I see that that our last opportunity has gone by us. I don't consider the matter done. You know, I'm looking at several other options to pursue this matter further. It was a big disappointment. I thought that we had pushed this issue enough, you know, to try to control the bull population on the east side, Unit 34. And I've heard several gentlemen propose about the problems with the bull elk. And while it's a good idea to have 450 elk tags, we wish that there would have been more bull tags on the east side of Unit 34, especially for New Mexico residents. And extremely worried now, you know, about the mule deer population in the next 4 or 5 years, especially with the Roxy law in place. I just don't know how this is going to fare for the mule deer in this part of the state. And we will take this matter up another time. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, do we have any other comments for discussion or any? Absolutely, Vice Chair.
Stuart, just one quick question on the target harvest. Can you tell me, are those on public lands? Are those on private land? How does the target, if there's a need for a target hunt, how does that work? Where are those target hunts located?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Archuleta, if there are public lands in there, we will definitely bring in public hunters as well. If it is a targeted hunt, even if it's on private land, we bring in, the rule states that 50% of the hunters on that private land, on that will be public draw hunters as well. And so when we have those targeted harvests, we do bring in from people that put in their application, they check a box that said, I'd like to be put on a population management list if a hunt is called. Once that hunt is determined, we call up that list and ask if they would like to participate. We will give them a description of what that hunt area is, the dates, et cetera. They could accept or decline the hunt. Private land, again, we would put 50% of the hunters from the population management hunt on those lands as well. So we do have public hunters on private as well as sometimes we do hunt public land if it is a concern for conflict as well.
Great, so it's an opportunity for resident hunters who make sure we really want to promote that they check that box for another opportunity to draw another tag. So
Commissioner,
super, thank you very much.
Commissioners, do I have a motion?
Give us a second point of the correct language to make the appropriate motion.
Bear with me, my apologies.
The department respectfully
suggest the following motion. Oh, sorry, I'm sorry, pardon me. I move to adopt the proposed changes of 19.31.14 NMAC as presented by the department and allow the department to make minor corrections to comply with the filing of this rule with the state records and archives.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Director Sloan, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Salazar Henry,
No, and I'd like to explain my vote.
Commissioner Lopez,
Yes.
Commissioner Faulkner,
Yes.
Vice Chair Gilletta,
Yes.
Chair Salazar Henry.
Yes,
Motion passes 4-1.
thank you. Commissioner Salazar, would you like to explain your no vote?
Thank you. I just want to be, if nothing if consistent, voted no on the muzzleloader removal of scopes. And so I don't support the rule as it's been structured. I believe that it could have been more refined in the application of hunt structures throughout the state. Thank you.
Thank you. So as we discussed previously, I think we can move into, we'll skip agenda items 9, which is executive session, and we'll skip agenda item number 10. We are now moving to agenda item number 11, which is the rule hearing, commission deliberation and decision on 19.31.13 NMAC Deer Rule. And so, okay.
Chair, this is Valerie Jo. I was just wondering, since it was scheduled for 1:15, would tune in until that time for specifically for the rule hearing. Perhaps maybe the next 1:12, the delisting of the Gould turkey discussion might be a better item to move up, or even 14, the biennial review.
No, the reason being is that I do have someone who had submitted comments on the delisting, and because I think we were going to introduce that into the record, I think they're probably looking for that later in the afternoon after the executive session.
Just a point that since it is scheduled for 1:15, I don't want anyone who might be tuning in at 1:15 to be looking for it and not finding it. Maybe there's a different item like a director's report or something else that could be moved up. Just a thought.
Madam Chair, if I may, I think on the Gould's turkey delisting, that individual that wanted to submit something to the record, it is in the official Gould's turkey. So statute actually explains how comments are done for delisting process. That is not by commission rule, it's actually set by statute. That individual's comments were during the official comment period for the director's recommendation to you all. So that is part of my packet here. But that would be one, as Assistant Attorney General Valley Joe said, was not a hearing. It's an official. We did meet all the statutory requirements to come to you all today for a decision. So that comment is in the official statutory record as for a delisting process.
Oh, okay. I appreciate that comment. I tried to get those kind of comments earlier, right? When we came back from our break. And so, commissioners, thank you for your indulgence and your patience on this. So the question is, rather than go into the rule hearing on deer rule, should we go into the delisting Gould turkey discussion? And rule hearing, I thought we wanted to have those two combined together, is my recollection. We could now jump into items number 14, 15, and 16. I'd like to save the general public comments for later.
Madam Chair, may I make a suggestion?
Fine, yes, please.
That we, and Stuart, please correct me if I'm wrong, your recommendation or your suggestion was that we go ahead and do item 12 now, because we've met all statutory requirements for hearing, or not hearing, for actually a rule, or a decision, or listing, sorry. I want to get this correct.
Thank you,
And we
Vice
don't have to do any of the other, we can hold on the others that from a timing perspective.
And Vice Chair and Chief, I heard you very loud and clear about doing the delisting first. But in past conversations, Director Sloan, I thought there had been some opinion that we should have those two together, the delisting right before the rule hearing. If I misunderstood you earlier, then I'll back off and we could do the delisting.
Madam Chair, I apologize for confusing the issue. I think what I was trying to say was that we needed to ensure that the Gould turkey was delisted before we had the hearing, not necessarily that they have to be
Right before
second,
the other.
just
Okay.
we have to delist them before we do the rule hearing.
So I just thought I heard some inconsistencies between you and the chief, and I apologize. So got it now. So then let's go ahead and go to the delisting item number 12. And if we get through, it's 11:22. Then Chief Kirkpatrick, if we could just move right into that one, be, stand by if you could. Okay, Chief, Lively, if you could proceed with item number 12, delisting Gould's turkey discussion.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, as you all recognize, we've started this process, the delisting process a while back. It is described in the Wildlife Conservation Act how a delisting of a species occurs. We followed all the statutory requirements of it. Real quickly, the Gould's turkey was listed in the WCA in 1974. We published a recovery plan for the Gould's turkey in 2017, and in 2018, we established a pretty significant field research program using the GPS transmitters to really get a better understanding of population dynamics, how they move around the landscape, etc. Our recovery goal was to ensure the long-term persistence of Gould's turkey within the historical range in New Mexico. That historical range is specifically in the Palencia and Animas Mountains, probably the Sierra San Luis as well. But we wanted to maintain at least 175 Gould turkeys within that mountain range. What you see here is location data from our marked birds. That location data shows that they are using historic range throughout the entirety of the Palencia Mountains. We also see connectivity into Mexico, those dots going down into the Sierra San Luis. Most likely you have connectivity all the way down to Sierra Madre Occidental, all the way into probably close to Oaxaca. So you have long connectivity in there, would feel pretty stable in the population in New Mexico, and the ability for those animals to have connectivity back to replenish from Mexico where the larger populations exist. You also see some connectivity into the Arizona populations, into the Huachuca Mountains almost as well. So according to statute, we had started the delisting investigation on November 1st, 2021, so approximately a year ago. We sent emails to interested parties that have talked about Gould's turkey or shown interest in Gould's turkey before. We had the delisting investigation report underwent peer review as required in statute in March of 2022. We received on the basis of the peer review panel, we had a unanimous support of our peer reviewers. The peer review goes to all the four-year universities in New Mexico. They select one reviewer at each one of the four universities. They all supported the department's recommendation that Gould's turkey has met recovery criteria for eventual delisting. Again, on the comment period, we had a 160-day comment period that was a statutory comment period. You'll see we went from April 12th till the end of it. We received 13 comments, 10 in favor, 3 in opposition to delisting. Some of the comments in opposition was people concerned about future wildfires in the Palencia Mountains and potential loss of habitat. As we showed that we do have connectivity into Mexico, which is very helpful for us. We have connectivity into Arizona, so it is not an isolated population. You'll see the public meetings we had from April to July in the different parts of the state. We had okay attendance. Some people didn't come, but we did go down specifically in Hidalgo County, where Gould's turkeys are, and had a meeting there. We did receive in that comment letter, there was a comment specifically from Hidalgo County that was in support of our delisting. So that is part of the official record as well. And so we do not, under the WCA, it describes what a threatened species is. It's likely to become endangered or extinct throughout the foreseeable future within its range or a significant portion. Again, our analysis shows that based on the historical information we've had, plus the most recent ongoing field research from the GPS state, we feel that the population is no longer threatened and no longer warranted as a threat in listing, and therefore we're coming to adopt, proposing that you adopt the directors and the department's recommendation that we delist Gould's turkey from the wildlife, according to the Wildlife Conservation Act. So with that, I would take any questions you may all have.
Thank you, Chief. Commissioners, do you have any comments or questions? Commissioner Salazar Henry.
I'm gonna use the microphone to give a big shout out and appreciation to the Las Cruces Wild Turkey Sportsman Association, who helped draft the legislation for the raffle of the Gould's turkey and has been a huge advocate for recovery of the species and opening it for hunting. So that's my comment.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments? Okay, public comments. Very good. Well, if there are no other comments,
Madam
yes.
Chair, we do have one online comment that just came through. We had Katie DiLorenzo. Katie, you are allowed to speak.
Hello again, this is Katie DiLorenzo on behalf of the New Mexico chapter of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers. Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. BHA has previously expressed support for delisting of Gould's, being that the recovery goals have been met and the most recent investigations and best available science point to long-term viability and a stable population in multiple locations. We strongly support the department's decision to delist and greatly appreciate the dedication of our wildlife professionals, conservation groups, and hunters to reach this positive outcome. Thank you.
Very good. Do we have any other comments?
Madam Chair, no additional online comments.
Thank you. Commissioners, anybody care to make a motion? That's Commissioner Salazar Henry.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the delisting of Gould's turkey as authorized under the Wildlife Conservation Act 17240 NMSA.
Second. Thank you. And because this is not a rule making session agenda item, I'm going to go ahead and ask for a roll call vote. All in favor say aye. 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 All opposed say nay. Ayes have it. This motion for delisting is now approved. So we can move on to Chief Kurt Patton on the biennial review. This is an action item. And we look forward to hearing from you, Chief.
Yes. Good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. It's a good segue into a different process under the Wildlife Conservation Act, and that is the biennial review of state listed species. In this case, instead of a separate statutory process for delisting or listing a species under state law, the biennial review is intended to review the status of existing listed species and move them, say, uplisting from threatened to endangered or downlisting from endangered to threatened. So this process was begun last spring. I came to you and indicated that we needed to do this by biennial review. We initiated a public comment period where we elicited biological and ecological information. That was a 90-day comment period that it was started in March. We received no comments at that time from the public. We presented a draft of the biennial review to you at your August 19th meeting. Shortly thereafter, we initiated a 14-day comment period on the actual document from the public. We received 3 comments during that process. None of them were germane to the biennial review process. They were focused on response by the department or perceived lack of concern from the department in response to the Calf Canyon fire that was burning last summer. Again, not relevant to the biennial review. So just briefly, we're here today seeking your approval on the final biennial review. And just briefly, based upon the review of our biologist and the department's recovery coordinator, there were no status changes, either uplisting or downlisting of state listed species during this review. That is it. Thank you for your time, and I'll answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Commissioners, do we have any comments, discussion? Do we have comments from the public? Okay, well, then in that case, do we have a motion? And I'm happy to make the motion. I hereby move to approve the 2022 biennial review of state listed, threatened, or endangered species. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Vice Chair. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Thank you, Chief. So moving right along, if I could please hear from Matt Anthony, Department of Game and Fish Captain, on the shooting preserve application for Landon Berry. This is an action item, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you, Chief.
That we've been trying to get up for a while, so it's just in the negotiations going up here. So.
Oh.
Matter of you got from the sharing operation that how you're presenting 15 years ago.
Thank you.
We're going to be presenting a shooting preserve application for Landon Berry. Landon Berry property is located just outside of Raton. So we'll figure out how to work this thing, get it rocking along. Statutory authority under this is 17.336, which allows the Game Commission to authorize shooting preserves and so forth. If you need me to read it, I can. Otherwise, we'll just kick on through it. All right, so under Title 1935, the captive wildlife uses, these are some of the questions to the answers that we have. So basically minimum acreage, we require 30 acres. This one's going to be 1,614. Method of hunting and illegal means September 1 through March 31. And they're allowed to release those birds prior to that. Currently pheasants, chukars, and mallards are what's allowed through rule. They're requesting pheasants and chukars. They have paid their reasonable fee of $200 so far this year for their application. The location, approximately 5 miles south of Raton, 1,614 deeded acres is the request. It is bordered on I-25 on the eastern side and Highway 64 to the southeast. So the property is located southeast Highway 64. Here's the map, Raton being at the confluence of the two highways above. The red outline, as we blow it up, shows you 5 miles south of town. That's going to be the acreage that they're requesting. Permit, what they've been asking for is the propagation and possession of up to 250 pheasants and 250 chukars at a time. So they look like. Here's some of the land. The landscape is there at the place, some of the wetland area and some of the riparian zones, and then also some of just the grassland, water holdings, fence lines. So you can see it's pretty grassland type area. So suitable habitat for pheasants and chukars. Based on the inspections of the property, we don't have any conflicts with the neighbors that we know of. Nothing's been presented with any kind of issues. We know no possible conflicts with the operation and the safety or any of the area. It's pretty much out in the country. And the property is all deeded.
With that, questions?
I want to say thank you, sir. That was wonderful. Commissioners, comments? I see one from Vice Chair.
Actually, I was just wondering if you'd put up the map one more time. It's like, it was quick and
Bounce back to that.
nice. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And if you, so just for a retrospective, so up there at the confluence, Highway 64 goes east out of Raton, prior to going up Trinidad Pass, and then south of that is where Highway 64 joins the interstate.
Yep.
That is right at the forward tip of the property. So their property goes right up to the junction of 64 and I-25.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
I'm sorry, are you saying east or west?
It goes southeast from Highway 64 and then west of the interstate.
Okay. Commissioner Salazar Henry?
I just have a question and maybe the director, if you can't answer it. So they're gonna release chukars, pheasants, and what else? Quail? No?
All their
Just chukar and pheasant?
yes, sir.
And so essentially they're gonna import chukars or they're gonna grow out chukars there and then release them?
The permit will be so they can propagate them there on site and or they can purchase them for the sites.
You don't anticipate any chukars surviving their ponds?
They should.
And if they did, so what? Okay.
Good for them. Thank you, Commissioner. Any comments from the public? Okay, I guess that's a no.
No online.
Okay, very good. Well, if that concludes our discussion, I'll go ahead and move to approve a shooting preserve on 1,614 acres of the Landon Berry property located in Colfax County as presented by the department. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Vice Chair. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All. Said aye. All opposed, say nay. Okay. Ayes have it. Motion passes. Shooting preserve is there. Thank you, sir. Have a good day. Okay, now we can hear from the director on his director's report. It's 11:39. And commissioners, I think after the director's report, this agenda item, members of the public and Department of Game and Fish, I think after the director's report, then we'll go right into our lunch session, into the executive session. Director? Wow.
Madam Chair, Commissioners. So I'm here to give you a brief update on some of the things that have happened since our last commission meeting together. As you can see from this picture here on the front page, that's one of the Make-A-Wish hunters that was able to get out to New Mexico and hunt this year.
How many points is that? Looks like a 12 or 14.
I would have to ask one of the guys. I haven't looked at it very closely.
Looks pretty big.
And the other picture there, right underneath the Gila Ranger Station in reserve, is the second hunter that made the hunt of the lifetime. So I'll start off with calling out a couple of our biologists who finished their master's degrees between our meetings here. Both successfully defended their theses. Caitlin Rule working on bighorn sheep sidability, and Jane Trujillo on the Eagle Nest Lake fisheries. So that's pretty exciting. We have 2 more master's degrees to add to the department. In terms of changes within the department, our own Darren Vaughn, right over here, has been promoted to the communications director position, and Kayla Wolf. Kayla Wolf is promoted to the information center supervisor. A long list. Desi Ortiz has been promoted to the OHB staff manager position. Sean Carroll is promoted to the lieutenant for revocation manager. Stephen Apodaca has been promoted to sergeant of the Las Vegas Supervisory District. And finally, Laramie Hammer has been hired as the department's first manager of the LBAR. So he's been hard at work getting winter wheat planted and getting the pivot up and running and that kind of stuff. So it's pretty exciting. That's the short list of promotions, and more are coming, and more hires as well. So in terms of survey research and restoration, we've done a bunch of that over this period. We stocked Rio Grande cutthroat trout that were salvaged during the Calf Canyon burn into the middle of O'Neill Creek and the Canadian drainage. We've begun the kokanee spawn at Navajo Lake. It's been a little up and down, but we're doing the best we can. Normally we would have that at Heron Lake, but there is no water in Heron Lake to speak of, so we had to move over to Navajo. We have restocked Rio Grande suckers and Rio Grande chub into the East Fork of the Jemez or transferred them from the East Fork of the Jemez to the Rio Frijoles on Bandelier National Monument. And we tagged 14,000 largemouth bass from Rock Lake and stocked them into Lake Roberts, Bill Evans, and Clayton Lake for an ongoing study. During this period, the department flew elk surveys across the state between September 25th and October 6th. 3 helicopters flying simultaneously to collect demographic data on various elk herds. We also had department personnel and New Mexico State University personnel up in the Pecos working on our ptarmigan project, banding and identifying those birds that are still up there. We've also done work banding dove, quail surveys, and bighorn sheep surveys all during this period. In terms of public engagement, it's another pretty lengthy list of things we've done. We had the Make-A-Wish hunters, you saw from the pictures there. We have had officers and public information folks involved in Women in the Outdoors, the Eastern New Mexico State Parade, Chavez County Fair, and the DeBaca County Health Fair. We've also been in the Southern New Mexico State Fair and the Southeast New Mexico Fair. We recently hired, and I think we're close to finishing with a temporary webmaster to complete the work that our prior webmaster who resigned is undertaking. We hope within the next month to be able to put that out to a test group to see how the website works, if everybody's happy with the redesign. I know we've shown it to commissioners, several of you, and it seemed like it went over well. We'll see what the public thinks of it. The OHV program has purchased helmets and goggles that will be given out to all OHV education class participants under the age of 18 to further promote OHV safety. The Hunter Education Program offered the first in-person Hunter Ed camp since the start of the pandemic. 21 campers attended the hands-on educational weekend in the Sacramentos. We're also working with several schools across New Mexico to offer Hunter Ed in schools as either an online or after-school course. Our shooting sports program, the Responsible Hunter program, wrapped up its 21-22 season and provided support and department funding of $18,000 to 11 statewide shooting clubs representing 180 youth members in continued support of youth shooting sports across the state. We've undertaken a range cleanup days, both at the Clayton range and at the TP range. We attended and were a sponsor of the New Mexico Outdoor Economics Conference last week in Taos. A lot of contact there, a lot of folks came by, got a lot of praise from the sponsors of the event, as well as I believe Senator Heinrich was there. Our 3 program conservation officers hosted a one-on-one squirrel hunting and fishing camp near Camado, which was very successful. A lot of good times were had by all. I mentioned the fairs that we attended in addition to the New Mexico State Fair. And lastly, the department is working to expand their 3D archery program as a next step to hunting. They hosted a 3D archery shoot event at the Santa Fe office as a test run before 3D events and a team building event for this department. 22 staff participated, so now I think we're ready to take that out on the road.
And that lower picture in this slide here is of our poach coach, which was redesigned by our field operations division and has made several appearances at events across the state and been very popular. And that's just a brief summary of some of the things we've been up to.
Director, it sounds like the department has been very busy, and I want to say thank you for all of the work, the hard work that all of you do. Excellent. Commissioners, any comments or questions for the director? Commissioner Salazar Henry?
I just wanted to thank Mike for the good presentation that he did at the interim committee for water and natural resources. It looks like between Jesse and Mike and Mike Sullivan, you guys convinced the legislature that you need a recurring $9 million, not a one-shot deal for RAWA. So thank you very much for the presentation. You all did a great job. I got to watch it online.
Thank you. Actually, Commissioner Salazar Henry, I'm going to go on the record too. I don't think that members of the public really understand what happens behind the scenes before we come to these meetings. Every commissioner comes very prepared to the meeting, and getting to sit in as chair, it's kind of like a flight control person, you know, sitting in the tower. Department of Game and Fish, and this is a shout out to you, Director, and to Chief Lively. The commissioners, in order to come prepared, they ask lots of questions. As an example, Commissioner Salazar Henry this week was sending you requests for data, lots of data. And it's not simply push a button. I know it isn't. And I want to say thank you to the department for always responding to each of our calls and our requests for information. It's not always easy. And so I want to say a big shout out. And I want to say thank you to the public, because although some of these emails look like form emails, okay, I know people are taking the time to reach out to us, whether it's an issue on E+ or it's an issue that's not on our radar screen this year. I'm going to say we are listening. We respect you all. We respect every single opinion that is coming in. So I just wanted to say that big shout out to all of you. We are listening. So that said, Director, if you have nothing else to add, I'm going to say we're going to adjourn now at 11:50. The commission has blocked 1 hour, since we are going in before 12 noon. I'm going to say for the record, I hope to be back around 1 o'clock. Okay. We've been very efficient with our time this morning. And so I hope to see you all back at 1 o'clock. Thank you. I think I need to have a motion to go into executive session. Vice Chair, would you like to make that motion on going into executive session?
Yes, Madam Chair, I move to adjourn into executive session closed to the public pursuant of section 10-15-1H8 NMSA 1978 to discuss the property purchase, acquisition, or disposal, section 10-15-1H7 NMSA 1978 attorney-client privilege, litigation update, threatened litigation discussion, and section 10-15-1H2 NMSA 1978 personnel matters.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Oh, I think I heard two seconds, extra seconds. That's good.
I'll give it to the honorable senator from the beautiful counties of Hobbs, Lee, Carlsbad, and all those wonderful counties in the south.
Okay, I have a second. Ciao. But I think we need a roll call vote. Director?
Commissioner Salazar Henry.
Yes.
Commissioner Lopez.
Yes.
Commissioner Colburn.
Yes.
Vice Chair Archuleta.
Yes.
Chair Salazar Higbee.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimous.
Now we are in executive session. Hope to see you all back at 1 o'clock. 10, action on items from the executive session. Vice Chair, did you want to say something?
Yes, Madam Chair. This commission has adjourned into executive session, closed to the public. During the executive session, the commission discussed only those matters specified in this motion to adjourn, and it took no action as to any matter.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Oh, no,
Madam Chair,
it's not a
prior-
motion. She
no.
just stated.
I just
It
stated.
was just an announcement. Okay.
Madam Chair, I do have a motion, however.
Okay, well, that was what I was waiting for.
Okay, based on the discussion for item 9B3, I hereby move that the commission proceed to the purchase of the Santa Fe County Record 22202 disposition of Richard Avenue property, Santa Fe, New Mexico. And and authorize the chair to sign any documents to finalize the sale of that property.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Salazar Henry, for making that second. I think we need a roll call vote.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Salazar Henry,
Yes.
Commissioner Lopez. Yes. Commissioner Folker. Yes. Vice Chair Archuleta,
Yes.
Chair Salazar Hickey.
Yes,
Motion passes unanimously.
thank you, Director. Thank you, Commissioners. Okay, moving right along, we are going to move to agenda item number 11, where we are going to hear from Stuart Lively. So with that said, this is, this hearing will please come to order. My name is Sharon Salazar Hickey, Chair to the Commission. I will be serving as the hearing officer and be advised by the Commission's counsel from the Office of Attorney General. The purpose of this hearing is for the Commission to receive public comment on repealing and replacing the Deer Rule Title 19, Chapter 31, Part 13, New Mexico Administrative Code, which will become effective on April 1st, 2023. These hearings are being conducted in accordance with the provisions of the Game and Fish Act and the State Rules Act. These hearings are being audio taped and video recorded. Anyone interested in a copy of the audio tape or video recording should contact Ryan Darr with the Game and Fish Department. Public notice of this hearing was advertised in the New Mexico Register, the New Mexico Sunshine Portal, and the department's website. Copies of the proposed amendments have been available on the department's website. Those wishing to comment here today must have registered to submit public comments. The rule hearing will be conducted in the following manner. Staff will present pre-filed exhibits. Exhibits admitted into evidence are available for review by the public on the department's website. After all exhibits are entered, we will proceed to the presentation of the proposed rule, after which testimony will be taken from the audience. Participants are asked to wait until they are called upon to speak in order to ensure that the hearing is accurately recorded. Only one person at a time shall be allowed to speak. Any person recognized to speak is asked to identify yourself by name and who you are affiliated with for the record each time you are recognized, and to speak loud and clear to accurately record your comments. After a person has offered comments, they will stand for questions from the hearing officer. The audience may also ask questions of anyone offering comments after being recognized by me. These hearings are not subject to judicial rules of evidence. However, in the interest of efficiency, I reserve the right to limit any testimony deemed irrelevant, redundant, or unduly repetitious. The commission may discuss the proposed new rule after the public comment portion of the hearing. Final commission action, including adoption of the rule, may occur after the conclusion of the presentation and public comment period of each hearing. The hearing is now open. Hearing item number 11, rulemaking hearing on the Deer Rule 19.31.13 NMAC for the record. Now, are there any exhibits for the proposed amendments to 19.31.13 NMAC for the record?
Madam Chair, I wish to enter 6 exhibits into the record. Exhibit 1, the notice of the rulemaking. Exhibit 2, the initial proposed rule. Exhibit 3, the presentation that I'll be giving today. Exhibit 4, the summary of the proposed changes. Exhibit 5, the technical information we relied upon to develop the rule. And Exhibit 6, the 113 public comments received during the rulemaking process.
Thank you, Stuart. Can you please introduce the proposed amendments to 19.31.13?
Chair, members of the commission, again, similar to the ELK, this is the 3rd time you've heard this rule hearing. Real briefly, just going through the public comments, it's kind of similar comments to ELK. You'll see the majority of the comments were on muzzleloaders as well, with 4 against, and then modify. Some of the modify was taken into account in the change in language that we had on the 1X scope for a person with a disability that was included in when you all passed the manner and method rule. And then for the most part, you'll see for a lot of the licenses that we are proposed in favor of the license adjustments that we made across the different portions of the state. And I'll get to that here in just a second as we go through, like I'll do for elk, I'll go quadrants of the state. Real quick on deer, unlike elk, we do not harvest females, virtually very few females. So harvest is not driving population dynamics in terms of population growth per se. We don't see more deer because of less harvest on the males. What we do see is just a different age structure of males, older age class with less harvest and vice versa. So we hope to see a long-term trend of over 35 doe or fawns, per does to maintain populations. Anything above that, we feel like it'll be a growing population. You'll see our 4-year average was right at the maintain. So we're probably not necessarily growing populations necessarily right now. I think a lot of that's drought driven and other factors. Hopefully with a little bit better monsoon season this year, we'll see a better reproductive survival of those fawns this year. Real quick, just in the harvest, last year we sold just over 37,000 licenses, about a 28% success rate across the state. Again, as you'll know, we've harvested almost 9,000 bucks with 138 does harvested statewide. Most of the doe harvest is occurring on agricultural fields, where we're dealing with depredation type issues. But again, we're a male harvest strategy. Like the other big game species, the proposals are to remove scopes from muzzleloaders that you did already this morning, adjust the season dates to address that calendar shift that we discussed, and then to also minimize overlap of weapon types or seasons in certain GMUs, so we don't have elk hunters and deer hunters overcrowding a specific GMU too much high density hunters at one point in time. So that was some of our overlap adjustments that we were doing. In the Northwest area, one of the biggest things that we did is we had moved our kind of a quality management area, moved our youth hunts from the middle of the rut back to, we left a few in the rut, those 15 and 25 tags you'll see, but the majority of those we moved back to October hunts like we had in the previous year. That was kind of we're a concern over older age class males being harvested at too high of a rate. And then you'll see we created a hunt on the Marquez, and then also a hunt in GMU, a new archery hunt in GMU 7 and 9, and then designating GMU 8 as a quality hunt. Overall in the Northwest, it's a license reduction of 20 licenses across all the GMUs, or a 0.4% decrease in the Northwest. Moving to the Southwest is adding a new hunt for white sands missile range on Rhodes and Stallion range, and then creating a 4-damage whitetail deer, cows whitetail deer hunt in GMU 21 and 26. 21's the Black Range, and 26 is down in the Hatchet Mountains. Little hatchets mainly in the desert around there, and then creating a 4-damage whitetail and a 4-damage mule deer hunt down in the Palencia Mountains, or in GMU 27, and then opening the River Ranch and WE to be available for deer hunters that drew there. Overall, 2% increase in licenses in the Southwest region, or 185 licenses. Moving on to the Southeast, this is kind of the area where we've probably seen more declining buck to ratios through time, and we have some bigger adjustments in license numbers down in there. The Huey hunt area, the Huey was reduced. We used to manage some BOR lands that they were able to hunt on, but this is specifically for the Huey, where the deer aren't really there as more. So you'll see we're reducing those licenses down to 2. And then moving GMU 34 hunts
So they don't overlap with the elk hunts. That was part of the elk rule where you saw we created some new elk hunts and trying to fit the windows in there so we didn't have deer and elk hunters on top of each other at the same time. Overall, in the southeast, again, like I said, this is where we had the biggest cut in licenses for deer, but a 5% reduction in overall licenses in the southeast for deer, or 610 less licenses in the southeast. And then in the northeast, virtually no changes in there. The only thing we are proposing is allowing a either sex whitetail deer hunt up there. We are seeing whitetail deer continue to move westward from Texas, and that's in that 55A, so right around the Raton area. Raton to the Colorado border basically is where we're looking at to allow for the harvest of whitetail deer up there. An increase of 3% licenses or 85 licenses across the Northeast. So statewide, it was a net decrease in licenses overall of 360 licenses, or a 1% change. Again, we had increases in some of the northern units, but decreases mainly in the Southeast. So with that, I would take any questions you may all have.
Thank you, Chief. Would anyone like to comment on the proposed amendments to 19.31.13? Do we have comments online?
Madam Chair, we have no online comments.
Wow, okay. So, those that registered, I guess, no, we don't need to revise the attendance sheet. And do we need to admit an attendance sheet into the record? So, at this time, the attendance sheet will be marked and admitted as exhibit number 7. The comments submitted and testimony heard during the rule hearing will be reviewed by the commission and discussed during the open session of today's meeting. The commission will vote on the proposed amendments at that time. I would like to thank everyone present for their participation today and let the record show that this rule-making hearing is adjourned at 1:31 p.m. Very good. Now let's move into our open discussion. I tried to see if we had any comments. I don't think we have any. And nothing online, and nobody in present. I'm looking for that. So I'll go ahead, unless Vice Chair, you would like to make a motion, but I can certainly, if you wish, I'll make the motion to move to adopt the proposed changes to 19.31.13 NMAC as presented by the department, and allow the department to make minor corrections to comply with filing this rule with state records and archives. Do I have a second? Second. Very good. Thank you, Commissioner, Vice Chair. So, Director, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Salazar Henry,
Yes.
Commissioner Lopez,
Yes.
Commissioner Fulper,
Yes.
Vice Chair Archuleta,
Yes.
Chair Salazar Hickey.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. So let's move into agenda item number 13. And this is the rule hearing on commission deliberation and decision 19.31.16 NMAC Turkey rule. So with that said, this hearing will please come to order. My name is Sharon Salazar Hickey, Chair to the Commission. I will be serving as the hearing officer and be advised by the Commission's counsel from the Office of Attorney General. The purpose of this hearing is for the Commission to receive public comment on repealing and replacing the Turkey Rule, Title 19, Chapter 31, Part 16, the New Mexico Administrative Code, which will become effective on April 1, 2023. These hearings are being conducted in accordance with the provisions of the Game and Fish Act and the State Rules Act. These hearings are being audio taped and video recorded. Anyone interested in a copy of the audio tape or video recording should contact Ryan Darr with the Game and Fish Department. Public notice of this hearing was advertised in the New Mexico Register, the New Mexico Sunshine Portal, and the department's website. Copies of the proposed amendment have been available on the department's website. Those wishing to comment here today must have registered to submit public comments. The rule hearing will be conducted in the following manner. Staff will present pre-filed exhibits. Exhibits admitted into evidence are available for review by the public on the department's website. After all exhibits are entered, we will proceed to the presentation of the proposed rule, after which testimony will be taken from the audience. Participants are asked to wait until they are called upon to speak. In order to ensure that the hearing is accurately recorded, only one person at a time shall be allowed to speak. Any person recognized to speak is asked to first identify yourself by name and who you are affiliated with for the record each time you are recognized. And two, speak loud and clear to accurately record your comments. After a person is offered comments, they will stand for questions from the hearing officer. The audience may also ask questions of anyone offering comments after being recognized by me. These hearings are not subject to judicial rules of evidence. However, in the interest of efficiency, I reserve the right to limit any testimony deemed irrelevant, redundant, or unduly repetitious. The commission may discuss the proposed new rule after the public comment portion of the hearing. Final commission action, including adoption of the rule, may occur after the conclusion of the presentation and public comment period of each hearing. This hearing is now open. Regarding hearing item number 13, rulemaking hearing on Turkey Rule 19.31.16 NMAC. Are there any exhibits for the proposed amendments to 19.31.16 NMAC for the record?
Madam Chair, I wish to enter 6 exhibits to the record. Exhibit 1, the notice of the rulemaking. Exhibit 2, the initial proposed rule that was posted on the department's website. Exhibit 3, the presentation that I'll be giving today. Exhibit 4, the summary of the proposed changes. Exhibit 5, the technical information that we relied upon to develop the rule. And Exhibit 6, the 25 public comments received during the rulemaking.
Stuart, can you please introduce the proposed amendments to 19.31.16?
Madam Chair, members of the commission, as with the other species rules we discussed, this is the third presentation on this. Real briefly, just wanted to show kind of turkey harvest through time and license sale to time. Through time, you saw, and we kind of discussed at the previous meetings, we saw kind of a bump during that license sales bump during the COVID period, 2020 season, kind of came back down a little bit in the license sales this year, but the harvest stayed a little bit higher. So a little bit higher spring success. You'll see the success rates are up almost 3%, excuse me, this last spring compared to the last. But overall, you'll notice a pretty stable harvest fluctuating around 2,500 to 4,000 birds, really in that 26 to 2,700. Overall, 25% of our hunters harvest a second bird in the spring, so pretty low number of individuals that are actually harvesting 2 birds in the spring. Second turkey you'll see is ranging from 450 to about 650 birds, depending on the year, with a high of about 850 in 2018. And then you have the fall harvest that's actually pretty small overall. Total fall harvest at the max of about 1,000, but then ranging down to about 500. With that hen harvest in the fall being about 409, nothing that we're really concerned about at a population level kind of a harvest. In total, we received 25 public comments, as I stated. The majority of those, again, some people comment on multiple aspects, but the majority of the comments were in favor of the department's recommendations. Some of that to change it to a brag limit of 1 in the spring, as we just kind of discussed, it really doesn't make biological necessary. It doesn't need it. 25% of those hunters, and it's being a male harvest driven strategy. Our proposed changes increasing the season length by 5 days in May to end on now May 15th. Adjust the hunts based on the calendar day shifts, or those ones where we start on Saturdays, and then open up GMUs 20 and 43 to fall turkey hunting. That's based on kind of some of the population stats that we've been seeing in there. Overall, pretty low harvest we suspect in the fall in there. And then changing the Washington Ranch hunt to be determined dates and tags. That's a special cooperation ranch that we hunt with to allow public youth hunting on there and the adjoining BLM around there. And that's that Black Management River area. That's administered by the BLM. And then the Huey, we just don't have the turkey population on the Huey anymore, so we're proposing removing that. And then the big one is adding GMU 26 and 27 as an entry permit. That's the Gould's turkey area. That's in the Palencia Mountains and in Animas Mountains to allow for a limited draw entry for Gould's turkey. And then creating a special WMA entry hunt on the L-bar, that new acquisition as well. And then, as you already have done, is prohibited turkey hunting on the roost on that first hearing that you had this morning. Real quick, just looking at this is for the Gould's turkey of May 1 to May 30th is the proposal up to 5 permits in that very southwest portion of the state where Gould's are. Again, a limited hunt up to 5. We suspect that first year the hunt will probably propose 4 licenses is what we're thinking for the next season that will start on May 1st of 2023. So it'll be the first public draw hunt for Gould's turkeys in the state if you approve this rule. With that, I'll take any questions.
Would anyone like to comment on the proposed amendments to 19.31.16? Imagine. Oh, you want to go to that public? No, I was just seeing, we don't have anyone. Commissioner Salazar Henry.
Stewart, the one question I got asked about the Gould's turkey hunt is why you didn't break it up into 2 licenses for 2 weeks instead of 4 licenses for a whole month. Because they felt like you're going to get your bird in 2 weeks. If you can't get it in 2 weeks, you're a bad hunter is what I heard.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner Salazar Henry, because we're having so few hunters out on the landscape at once, we just wanted to allow the flexibility of a hunter if they can go this weekend or next weekend instead of trying to limit it down to a short period. At 4 hunters, we don't think, or 5 hunters, we don't think we're going to have a hunter density issue, so it just gives more flexibility across.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Chief. At this time, the attendance sheet shall be marked and admitted as exhibit number 7. The comments submitted and testimony heard during this rule hearing will be reviewed by the commission and discussed during the open session of today's meeting. The commission will vote on the proposed amendments at that time. I would like to thank everyone present for their participation today and let the record show that this rulemaking hearing was adjourned at 1:41 p.m. Now, commissioners, shall we have another discussion? Do we want to have more comments? And we don't have anything online. I see no cards. So therefore, at this time, I will move to approve 19.31.16 NMAC as presented by the department and allow the department to make minor corrections to comply with filing this rule with state records and archives. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Commissioner. Director, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Salazar Henry,
Yes.
Commissioner Lopez, Commissioner Fulper. Yes. Vice Chair Archuleta,
Yes.
Chair Salazar Hickey,
Yes,
motion passes.
with 4 votes. Thank you, sir. Very good. Now, let's move to agenda item number 17. I always look forward to the general public comment. Do we have any persons present here today that would like to come forward to speak? I think they're going to come forward in just a minute. In the meantime, while we wait for them, do we have anybody online, Ryan, or
Madam Chair, we do have one individual online. Brandon Nguyen, you have been given permission to speak.
Oh, I'm so glad. Hi, Brandon Nguyen, welcome.
Hi, Madam Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to comment again. And I am going to comment. My comment is about public hunting. And I just want to hammer home the fact that the commission throughout this 4-year rule process just pretty much unilaterally across the board ignored the wishes of the New Mexico public. And as far as the wealth-based private land, private permit private ownership of the permits to hunt our animals here like it's unseen anywhere in the West. And, Madam Chair, you talk a lot about respect, right? You want people to be respectful and everything, and I'm doing my best, right? But respect's a two-way street. And, as a citizen of New Mexico, I feel highly disrespected that our, adamant wishes to make New Mexico more on par with the other Western states with public hunting of our public wildlife. I don't feel very respected at all. I feel absolutely disrespected by the commission, which is not unusual. This is a new commission, new administration over 4 years that of the new governor's administration, not a single tag has been moved from the private side to the public side. Everyone knows that it's a huge issue in New Mexico. The Mexicans were just really tired of being ignored. And that's really my comment, is that we need to be listened to. We're not going away. We're really going to double down on this. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Brandon Wynn. I do have a card from Jesse Dubell. Can you please come forward to the microphone? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the commission. Jesse Dubell here, New Mexico Wildlife Federation. First, I would just like to really commend the agency for the unbelievable work that they continue to do. And oftentimes, I'm very critical of the agency and the commission because that's my job to do that and really stand up for the residents of New Mexico and the things that matter to us. But the agency does an amazing job, and the delisting of the Gould's turkey is just one example of something that is really, really incredible and should be celebrated. I look forward to the day that we can see the delisting of the lesser prairie chicken. But it also speaks to the department's incredible partnership with a local landowner down in the Boot Heel. I think that that partnership was really essential to getting the success that we've seen with this particular delisting. Also, I'd like to recognize the incredible work of the conservation officers, some of whom have recently been in the news for some very high-profile apprehension of criminals. Dangerous situations. They have a dangerous job and they do amazing work. And so thank you very, very much to all the conservation officers for taking care of New Mexicans and New Mexico's wildlife. And also really excited to hear about the hiring of a manager at El Bar. So I'm really looking forward to meeting that manager and getting to know them and support their work in any way that we possibly can. So thank you very much, commissioners. Thank you very much, Director Sloan, Chief Lively, and everybody at the department.
Thank you, Jesse Dubell. Any other comments? No. Anybody online?
Madam Chair, no additional online comments.
Okay, well then in that case, let's move to agenda item number 18, new business. Any new business?
Of course.
Commissioner Salazar Henry, thank you.
I would ask this commission to please support adding in the next commission meeting an agenda item that discusses department and commission policy or process regarding supporting access to public land when it's being threatened with closure via county road closures. We just had an perfect example of a battle in Grant County on Walnut Road, and a lot of the conservation groups stepped up, and a couple of land use agencies stood up to find an alternative way to handle this instead of giving away the road to private landowners, and kept the public access open. So they're still working out the details. So I would just hope that this commission would go ahead and take the position of defending public access for our hunters and other recreationists.
So noted. Do we have any other new business? We have no new business. Okay. Well, then in that case, typically what we describe before we adjourn for the day, when is our next meeting? I'm going to go on the record and say that commissioners, Department of Game and Fish, and members of the public in the spirit of transparency, I'm going to say that I would like to have a special meeting in accordance with the Open Meetings Act on Tuesday, November 29th at 9 a.m. And maybe we could, I'm not, because it's a special meeting, and it will be litigation. It will be about litigation. We can maybe have a meeting at the State Game and Fish Department Conference Room in Santa Fe. And then for the majority of those that cannot attend there, we meet via Zoom, okay? So again, I think we do need to have one more meeting before the end of the year, and it would be a special meeting and an executive session on litigation. Is that okay, Director?
Madam Chair, that's fine. I just wanted to reiterate that it would be just an executive session. We wouldn't have any real agenda items to speak of, so while it'll be open to the public, I don't necessarily know the public wants to do more than maybe watch on Zoom.
Right, okay, well, very good. Well, with that said, this meeting is hereby adjourned at 1:49 p.m. on October 14th. Thank you again.